Welcome to day 2 of Cultivated Live from Planet 13 in a chilly Las Vegas. We have another great day lined up for you today. Yesterday was busy and awesome. I'm here with Krista and Jeremy and Tahir Johnson from Simply Pure Trenton. And I've been waiting for this. When I saw it on the schedule, I was like, this is going to be awesome. Tahir, how are you?
I'm fantastic, man. How have you been?
I've been good because, well, I follow everything you do, but it's happening.
Yes.
Give us the journey of Tahir in New Jersey and what lies ahead in the next month.
Oh my gosh! So in the next month, let's see, what day is it? It's November 30th. My mind is already in December, but you know we're all gears toward opening. Right now, we're planning to have our opening on January 15th. And as long as we continue to hit all of our construction approval guidelines, we're on track. We had our first inspection the day before yesterday on the parking lot, and we got approved. So they're about to finish off building our parking lot, and we had our first inspection inside yesterday, our plumbing inspection. So a couple more to go, and then put the walls up and have the commission come through. But we're working towards it as quick as possible, man.
Well, everything you said sounds like it just happened like overnight, but that's not the case.
Oh my gosh, Lord, it didn't. Especially that construction part, because that actually was the biggest holdup of my entire process. I had a stop work order for 6 months that held me down from not being able to open. So I actually was expecting to be open, months ago. But I'll tell you, as you hear people talk about the barriers in cannabis, you often hear them talk about the ones that are more obvious, like the capital, the real estate, the municipal approvals. I swear I've never heard anybody talk about like the difficulty of like the construction part, right?
Construction is a nightmare.
Oh my gosh, it literally is the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
Yeah.
But it's like commercial real estate development, right? Like I had to get approval from it seems like every government agency in New Jersey. From like the River and Canal Commission, the Sewer Commission. I thought I was selling weed. I swear I have not I've not really done anything that has to do with weed yet. So I'm looking forward to getting open and actually being in the cannabis business.
And that's been the road to opening in New Jersey, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have a long history in the cannabis industry.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your background prior to sort of fulfilling the dream of
Absolutely.
Simply
Yeah.
Pure.
So, one of the things that I'm thankful for, especially when looking at New Jersey now, like my road, even in Jersey, started before getting the license. I was super active in the advocacy, like legalization process in New Jersey. And I think doing that and being visible and like one of the leaders of that process, it transitioned over to, when I had the dispensary. So that's why I'm always telling people the value of advocacy and being in your communities. But that's been what I've been doing for the past 5 years. So in 2019, I quit my job in finance to go be a bud tender, working at a dispensary called Medleaf in Maryland, and just worked my way up from there. It all started when I got involved in the Minority Cannabis Business Association at Lobby Day. I had no idea what lobbying was outside of watching what the people on House of Cards did.
It's exactly like that. No, it's a little bit different.
No, I'm like, Remy dancing. That's what I'm doing. So it's like, showed up to Lobby Day, and I looked at a piece of paper, and I'm like, if one of my boys is chief of staff from one of these congressmen, should I hit him up? And everybody turns around and looks at me. So it's like that was my real introduction to the industry. So from there, I started working as the head of diversity at the National Cannabis Industry Association, and then the head of social equity at Marijuana Policy Project and U.S. Cannabis Council. And like being able to do that over the past 5 years not only allowed me to understand the industry, because I was actively a part of policy making at a state and federal level and a number of almost everywhere, right? But the relationships that you get just getting to know people like us, across years ago, right? Yeah. Even before I ever was going after the dispensary. So what happened is once I kind of leveled up to this, you have a built-in network, people that are following you and supporting you, but then also where to go for the right partners, vendors, visibility, and it's been good, man. Definitely not without its challenges, but like I said, the work that I've put in over the past 5 years is definitely here. And I think I'm like all over the place now. And people just see me like, dude, how do you do it? But I think the best saying I heard one time is it takes 5 years to become an overnight success, right? So it's like now you're everywhere, but it really was like a 5-year journey through this whole thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What about 5 years from now?
Oh man, it's interesting. Somebody actually asked me that yesterday, and it was like one of the first times I thought about it. They were like, "Wow, you've done all this in 5 years. Like, where do you expect to be?" And I was like, I honestly don't know, but I think one of the things that I know for sure is that coming into the industry, I always wanted to be able to be a person that broke down barriers and opened up opportunities for others, and now I've had the opportunity to do that. And even like showing and being a real example of what's capable and possible. So I think for me, growing a successful cannabis business, right? I would love to be be a black social equity like MSO. And then I think even a lot of times I think of now like what even can I do outside of cannabis, right? Like in the world, just using all these different skills that I've developed. Because I think one of the things that I love most about cannabis and that makes it so exciting is like the impact that you have on the world. So it's like, how can I expand it and still be doing the same things, but like broaden the net, especially like the social impact that we've been able to achieve in cannabis, right? So it's like, how can I replicate that in other things? I think it's a lot of what
Sounds
I
like you're going to be a commercial real estate developer.
Yeah. That's what I'm a commercial dev, but you know what? That's on my list that I think of because, real estate runs the world, right? So it's like now I really did it. Like, and it's when I think about it, it's not a small thing. It's like literally a $2 million like renovation project, and I've run the whole thing. Like I was on the phone a couple minutes ago, my contractor's calling me. Like I'm the guy communicating with everybody. I know a little bit about paving, like architecture, engineering now. I'm not enough to be good. I know I would never try to build anything, but I could talk to you about some stuff. So it's been dope.
Can you talk about your mindset shifting from advocate to operator? I know that's sort of a rare shift. And why do you want to pursue that, and what's been the hardest part?
So I think the shift from advocacy to operator is certainly an amazing thing. And I like being a student of the game. Like I watched the people before me that did similar things, and so I think one of the things that was kind of like dope about my career is that I don't know that I've seen anybody else that has been like embedded in like the advocacy part is like career and then like a owner like myself. So it feels cool to be carving a path. But one of the things that I've found is that especially because I've done so much work like with companies, like I know that most companies have goals around just corporate responsibility, diversity, social equity, and things like that. So now, like I'm actually, the things that I was helping other companies do and focus on, I'm focusing on it myself. So for one, make sure that I practice what I preach, right? Like all this stuff that I've been saying people should do or hold them accountable for over years, like I implement all of that into my business. So, we have a partnership, for example, with the New Jersey Reentry Corporation. We're hiring returning citizens, giving 10% of our employees from there, giving 2% of our revenue back to there, like small things like that. Doing things to support other applicants, social equity people. But the biggest difference in perspective, though, I think is, the way, even as you look at like laws and like the way that I was involved in that, there's a different perspective as a business owner and things that impact you as a business. And then like, what do I want for the world? And sometimes the divide is like this and sometimes it's like this. So it's trying to find the right thing to do. I think staying true to your values, like who you are, like not necessarily for not the dollar, but at the same time, like I have shareholders, like responsibility to them, and I want to grow in a business. So it definitely is a balancing act, and there are certain things that is very contentious on. So like a lot of times I just sit back and I'm playing the sidelines, especially having a lot of conversations with people, so that when I do make statements, it can be very thoughtful and like I have the right information because I know so many people like take what I say is like the gospel. So it's like I don't want to be like Tahir said this, right? So like I really try to be thoughtful about that balance, keeping a balance.
It's rare trying to be thoughtful when you make statements on social media. But one thing I just wanted to dive into is sort of how you build these, call them corporate social responsibility, labor practices, diversity, equity, inclusion, like how you build it from the ground up in an organization. Because in this industry, those are nice to haves for a lot of companies, but when you're trying to meet payroll and make a bottom line, those things tend to be the first to go out the window.
Oh yeah.
So how do you ensure that stays your mission?
I think for me, for me, as crazy as it sounds, like money is like it's important, but it's not my top priority in the business, right? Like for me, for one, being an example of like what a black-owned business can be, what a social equity-owned business can be, and that to show that we can do things at a higher standard is so important. So I'll say there are probably a number of things that I probably don't have to do, or like, you know what I mean? But I still do it anyway, because again, if I would show, hey, look, if you're a multi-million-dollar company or whatever, and like I could do this, you can do it too.
Right.
And so I'm always thinking about one thing that I do always think about a lot is and it sounds crazy, like what is my place in history like in cannabis, and how does what I do impact it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like if I do it, how does it open up the door for the next person or set that precedent for people to do it? So that's kind of one of the angles I look at it through too.
Yeah, it's a really thoughtful response. I mean, I would back your business 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
I want to ask a question that Krista generally asks. Like we were actually talking about it today or yesterday. So much of your work as an advocate is getting people to like the part where they're open.
Yeah.
So much of your work, construction and otherwise, has been to get to day one.
Yeah.
Or get to day 0 and then to day 1. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the challenge, I mean, for a lot of people, you'll find it too. It's actually you haven't actually been through the hard part. Right?
Yeah.
Like operating a retail business is a whole different set of skills. And like, how are you thinking about and planning for like January 16th?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and it's funny you say that, because I was having a conversation out here this week, and I said to somebody was like, you're almost at the finish line, and Wanda, who's my partner, with me, she's like, no, almost at the starting line. She was like, dang, it blows my mind, because this has been so much work and so tired that I'll be like, man, I can't wait till I get this place over so I could be resting. It's like, that's not even going to rest then. It's probably going to be crazy. But one of the best parts about it, I think, is one of the things that I'm doing is preparing, I think, having the best people around me. This has been mostly a solo operation for going on 2 years now, and as we prepare for opening, I've just started onboarding my executive leadership team, and that's been a game changer, because man, like these people are amazing. Like they all have came, like everybody who's on my leadership team, they've come from, other positions at like large companies. Like I have people that were executives at MSOs that are my executive leadership team now, or like my CFO was, the CFO of major like national like organizations and companies, right? So to have those types of people believe in my vision and help me execute it, it really means the world. But right now, days are like thinking about training, right? Like those final SOPs, like the experience, grand opening. It's amazing to be like finally thinking about these things and shifting gears, because like again, in the cannabis business, 2 years, and it's been like almost no business, no cannabis, and spending money on things. So
yeah, you come from this position right now where your stakeholders and like the entire project are regulators, essentially, right? Like needing to make regulators happy, and then overnight now you have to make customers happy.
Yep.
And those are two very different mindsets.
Yep.
What you need to be able to do to connect with those people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, and that's a good point. And I think in cannabis, of course, the regulators are the most important top thing in thinking about how you service customers and employees. Like the two things a lot of things that I think about, and this is from my background in banking. So probably the thing that I did the longest outside of cannabis was being a bank manager. And in that time, of course, banking, highly regulated, got to follow the rules. One wrong thing make you lose your job. And even as a manager, if something somebody else on your team does, not even you do, you can, be in hot water or lose your job. And so like there's that compliance regulatory aspect that's always a part of like my makeup. But then from a business standpoint, the top drivers that I always focus on are both customer and employee engagement. And back when I was at PNC Bank, I was in the top 1% of the entire company in both of those categories. And you see how, like, when you treat your people good, create a good environment, it also drives the customer engagement. So we want to make sure that we're tracking those metrics and then also tracking our actual performance and the things that we want to drive, right? Those KPIs, and then how do they align and come back and fix it and keep doing better. But one of the reasons I feel confident is because I have people around me, like, with experience, like, really, like, when I think the best people and everything, and like I said, even like that's internally, but even external, like the best partners. Like when I think of technology, like, man, like, not like the opportunity over all these years I've been in the industry, I've literally been thinking about, like, I've known, like, when I get a dispensary, this is what I'm going to have. Like, this is going to be my POS. I'm going to have this screen, right? So having the best partners, like, and then support, a lot of support from industry folks makes all the difference in the world. So it's really been helpful for me.
Well, it's all well earned.
Yeah,
and we can't wait for you to get to the. I think it's both a finish line and a start line. It's
right,
one of the, it's a circle, but you're getting to the start line and the finish line the same day in mid-January. And we want to thank you for stopping by this morning. And
course,
it's great to see you and the team.
Yeah,
and we wish you nothing but the best
always,
over the next
man.
6
Thanks for
weeks,
having me, man.
And then the next 6 weeks after that, and the 6 weeks after that.
You know it, man. And definitely got to have y'all stop by.
We'll see you in
you're
Trenton.
in Jersey, man. Come through. We'll definitely take care of y'all.
Love it.
Yeah.
Tahir Johnson from Simply Pure Trenton, thank you so much for stopping by. We're going to take a very quick break. We'll be right back with Shai Ramsahai. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the last name right. It's pretty good. From Royal Queen Seeds. And anybody in Las Vegas has seen the Royal Queen Seeds billboard, so we'll talk a little bit about that and about the business as well. Tahir, thank you so much. We'll be right back with Shai.
Peace, y'all. Yes.
We are back, Planet 13 for Cultivated Live, Day 2 from Las Vegas. We just said goodbye to Tahir Johnson because with all the stuff going on with him, he should be heading back to New Jersey to finish up construction and get everything in order. But he's really a super dynamic leader, and I'm very excited to welcome on Shai Ramsahai from Royal Queen Seeds. And I knew you were going to be here, but I didn't know that like 700 times between when I landed and now that I would see your billboards in Las Vegas. Tell us a little bit about the billboard decision adjacent to the show.
That's the reason we have the billboard. So,
I got it. So for me to see it.
Yeah, exactly. For you and for other people who are around MG Biz. So first of all, thank you for having me at this podcast.
It's great.
Yeah. So.
Tell us a bit about Royal Queen Seeds.
Yeah, Royal Queen Seeds is the world's biggest cannabis seed company from the world. We have more than 130 different varieties in our catalog. We have brand stores around the world, like Thailand, in Bangkok, New York, Barcelona, Amsterdam, and many more to come in the future. So,
And where are you seeing the growth when you look ahead?
Yeah.
The industry's grow. All those places you mentioned, the industry's growing.
Yeah.
Talk about where you think the growth is going to come from over the next year or two, or is it like everything's just exploding all at once?
Yeah, I think for us, the cannabis seed market is quite new in the US, so we are focusing ourselves in the US market at this moment. But we also keep an eye on South Africa at this moment. So I cannot tell too much about it right now, but something will happen there as well. They will open the cannabis market as well in South Africa. So we already have some plans in South Africa as well. And as I mentioned before, we have a shop in Bangkok. And they just legalized cannabis there last year in June 2022, and we were the first European company who opened a huge brand store over there. And things are changing so fast in Bangkok because there are so many dispensaries at this moment. In every corner you can find a dispensary. So it's an amazing market as well. And we are very proud that we have the biggest store in Bangkok. So we have a 5-floor building. Where we grow cannabis as well on the 3rd and 4th floor, so people can go into the
literally vertical farming, like you're on the 4th floor.
Yeah. People can see how we grow behind the glass, and then they can buy the flowers and seeds on the 1st floor, and then they can smoke on the 2nd floor. And because we have a huge lounge and a restaurant as well, so people can enjoy there for a few hours. So it's more like a cannabis museum experience center. So
it's like the Planet 13.
It's like Planet 13.
Thailand.
But you cannot smoke here yet.
Yeah.
Right?
Not yet, but soon.
Under
Soon?
construction.
The construction you've heard while we've been here. They're building a consumption lounge. They're building a little museum. Yesterday we were watching gummies being made, but I think today they're filling cans, like they're doing these beverages. Like it's fun to. I mean, it's. I mean, maybe it's like a brewery, like going to a brewery for the first time, but like seeing all the things that you love being made, whether it's plants, obviously, or seeds, or finished product. Like it is a unique experience.
Yeah, it's amazing, and people love it. So our goal as well to open more stores like that, like the Royal Queen's Experience Center in more places around the world. So we're busy with that as well.
Are you looking at real estate in Las Vegas?
Yeah.
He has real estate in Las Vegas on billboards.
On billboards, right.
We start with billboards, and we will see what's next. So
it's a pretty good start, actually. Pretty good start. And talk about sort of when you're at a show like this, is it making new connections in new markets? Is it building the brand? Is it what is the goal you have coming into Las Vegas? What you hope to be either done with or well on the way by Friday?
As you all know, MG Biz is the biggest cannabis show, I think, from the world, I guess. And
I can't imagine a bigger one.
So, and the nice thing is, the reason that we have a booth here and that we have the billboards here is just to make connections with other people. Just because, we are from Europe, a lot of people know us already, but they didn't have the chance to speak with us. And and we are looking for new distributors as well, new retail partners. So, we thought this is the best place to be. To get in touch with all the new potential customers and partners. So and so far, yesterday was just the first day, and we met a lot of people. So we are very happy so far.
And are people seeing the billboard?
Sorry?
Are people telling you they've seen the billboard on the way out from the airport?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's
funny because I think maybe 5 years ago when we came to the show, like there were a lot more. There were tons of cannabis billboards.
Yeah, serious?
Like there's some obviously pointing to like dispensaries in Las Vegas, but many more about the show.
Yeah.
And then this time I think there's one about the show, yours, right? But I actually think it's like because there's fewer, it stands out a lot. Like
Yeah.
I before you came on, I thought I'd seen 6 different ones, but you said there's 2.
Yeah, 2. Yeah. One close to the airport, and another one close to the convention.
Yeah.
And it was we spoke with the management team and said, okay, let's give it a try. And if people are mentioning it at the show that they saw our billboard, then we do it again next year. So maybe we'll do next year 5 billboards because
You're gonna do a whole takeover of the strip with like all the LEDs. Yeah. No, I love it too, and it actually speaks to unique ways to get in front of new audiences in the cannabis world.
Yeah.
And it is hard because it's more competitive than it's ever been.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it is. Yeah, we're quite lucky because the cannabis seed market is it just started here in the US. So we are one of the first ones who's here. You know, as well from Europe. We are the first European company who opened the physical warehouse here in the US.
And how does it work? Not to be.
That was my question. Yeah, that was my exact question. Yeah.
We spent a lot of money in lawyers, of course.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Step 1. Yeah.
I'm joking. Of course, lawyers are expensive, but we make the decision after the letter in 2021. There was a letter from the DEA that cannabis seeds were considered as hemp, and that means that you don't have to be in the matrix system, you know. So we can ship from Oregon to all the other states in the US. So for that reason, we say, okay, let's go right now. It's the moment to start in the US, and it's easy to sell hemp between the different states.
And who are your clients? Like, who are your clients, basically? Yeah.
Yeah, we sell a lot of online just to the end consumer.
Okay.
And beside that, we sell as well B2B, like to smoke shops, to head shops, to hydro shops. So that's a nice thing of cannabis seeds. It fits in different type of shops. So we were also at Champs in July here in Vegas.
Oh yeah, okay.
And in that show we met a lot of smoke shops, head shops, and right now we met a lot of hydro shops. So it's nice to see the different branches. So
Yeah, and when you're looking at like the U.S. market and you have a facility in Oregon and shipping seeds, like what are people generally looking for on the consumer side? Are they like something that can grow easily so I don't have to take care of it, or like is it about the yield? Is it about exotic things? Like what is an end consumer? What are they thinking about when they're looking at seeds?
Depends because we have different type of customers. So we have for everyone we have something, you know. So we have for the people who just start growing, we have the auto flowering ones. They are really easy to grow. You just put them in the soil and you give them water in your garden and it grows by themselves. And we have the feminized ones, the regular ones. They're a little bit more difficult to grow in a tent with lighting and with fertilizer, of course. So we have many different varieties in the catalog, and for everyone we have something. So,
Right, all over the map. Yeah. Well, I'm fascinated by the business and what you've done here at the shows from a marketing perspective, and we wish you nothing but luck. And hopefully next year we'll come back. We'll see. Your word first, 5 billboards? No, I'm just kidding. 5 billboards, 10 billboards. We'll talk to management, but no, it has been an effective tool certainly in relationship to the show. So kudos to you and the team, and good luck the rest of the show.
Thank you very much for the time and for the invitation, and hope to see you next year.
Oh yeah, well we'll be here for sure. We'll see you there. Ishai Remasai. And I am Jay Rosenthal, Krista Raymer, Jeremy Burke. We are live for Cultivated Live at Planet 13 in Las Vegas. We're going to take a short break. We're going to be right back with Lulu Sue. I think she's here. I can't see through that light. We'll be right back. Thanks everybody. Welcome back to Cultivated Live from Planet 13 in Las Vegas. Lulu, nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
We're going to talk, I want to talk about a couple different things if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
But let's talk about the Cannabis Media Council first.
Okay.
And tell us what that is, what you do.
So the Cannabis Media Council, I'm one of the co-founders. It is a trade association that was created to help push for normalization and destigmatization into mainstream media. So, we in the cannabis space for 20 years, we've been in our cannabis church, singing the praises, and there hasn't really been a lot of movement in terms of expanding into mainstream media. So we've been pushing forward with different relationships across different media platforms, major media platforms like Hearst. That's what we launched with last year. We're working with Condé Nast. We had the first PSA placed in Vanity Fair this year. And then a more controversial thing we did this month, we did a takeover of Pornhub.
Yeah.
So no matter a full day, 24-hour takeover of Pornhub, that's 1.8 billion views per day.
Describe what porn... No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I feel like we're having a foursome here right now. First thing in Vegas. So, no matter how you feel about porn, the fact is we're sticking to our mission, which is we're trying to get eyes outside of just our, cannabis industry into mainstream media, because that's the only way we're going to move things forward to expand just the awareness and the collective outreach, so people can actually start having conversations about it. And we pushed forward with that with our I'm High Right Now campaign, which I think is pretty clever. We won 6 Clios for that. We're up at the MJs this year for Trade Association. So that's what the Cannabis
Tell
Media
us about the
Council.
campaign.
So I'm High Right Now. That's kind of our little slogan. And we created 4 personas specifically targeting the elders. So, that is one untapped demographic that no one really, caters to. And if we look at the statistics, they're like the number one growing demographic for cannabis use. And if you look in there, in the cabinets, they have all these medications. So if we're, I remember back in the day, it was like, we have to hit the Chardonnay mom or the Whole Foods mom. That is not the person that is buying cannabis or consuming every day normally. But if you look at the elderly population, from topicals to sleep tinctures to all of the above, that is a great market that no one has really focused on. So the use case is appropriate.
Yeah, the average customer usually purchases from 3 locations. But somebody who falls into more of a senior category actually doesn't transact at 3 locations. They're closer to only 1. So they show up from a really loyal perspective.
Exactly. And, we worked with Sister Mercy, who's an amazing agency. And because everyone has had deep experience in cannabis, we also picked the elderly market because, with the advertising restrictions, you have to make sure that no one looks under 21. So okay, we're doing it.
Everybody looks old in this. It is interesting because there were, even before, actually 3 of us are Canadian. I'm American, but I live in Canada. Anyway, that has nothing to do with it.
Canadian
But pre-legalization, there was the seniors are going to be this massive market. We're going to cater to it, and it's going to be amazing. And then recreation, adult use happened, and then that sort of went away. And now, 5 years in, now it's like companies and brands are like, well, how do we differentiate, because this market is loyal, they have disposable income, and now the normalization has happened to a place, certainly in Canada, there are dispensaries everywhere. Yeah. So there's ones that everybody feels comfortable going into, and some that I wouldn't go into. There's everything in between, and so it is this evolution, what you're talking about. Yeah. I think Canada's actually quite ahead of a lot of places in the States. But it is interesting that someone like you is focused on how do we get there faster, and how do we actually do it in interesting ways that resonate.
It's also with the elders, it's changing their mindset, because that was the demographic that was first, all the just say no and the propaganda hit them. So I think just with education and conversations, like you would with your elders, I think that's what's key is having the I'm High Right Now campaign. It's very cheeky. It's a little bit provocative for some people, but everyone who says I sent this to my mom or my dad or my aunt, they're like, oh my God, they just had a blast. So we're trying to just focus on lighthearted more fun conversations, because everything has been very heavy and medical and X, Y, and Z, which is very much needed. Like social equity, social justice, all of that is needed. But, you know, we have to also honor that cannabis can be fun and lighthearted and social. And that's what we're trying to do is, and also like our world is so heavy with like cancel culture, censorship right now. So we just want to make fun campaigns that people can like resonate with, maybe bring a smile to their face. And that's our objective.
What's interesting specifically with that is like if you are targeting more of a senior population, the assumption then is always that the product goes medical in some format or likability. We're talking about like capsules, we're talking about CBD products, but we are ignoring that this group of people has an entire life of recreation.
Yes.
Like golf courses are real.
Yes.
and identifying and like picking out influencers within those communities is so helpful in helping with adoption when you have somebody go and talk about their own experience.
Agreed, 100%. And that's why we have 4 personas. One is the lovers, because, you know, like I didn't know, like a very high percentage of, you know, senior joy and relationship is a real thing. I'm trying not to be crass about something. I won't say it. And we have the golfer as one of our personas. We have the gardener, and then we have the walker. I mean, those are main activities that, you know, as you get older, like those are the things that you do. So we stuck to that. And another interesting thing that we really thought about was like, you know, if we're going to be doing normalization, usually if within a family structure, if grandpa and grandma are cool with it, it kind of trickles down to the rest of the generations within the family. And then once the family is into it, then that permeates into the community. And I really much believe in that because my parents and I came to the U.S. From China, and we ended up in Eugene, Oregon, of all places. And I don't know if you've been there, but it's like this hippie utopia that has not changed since probably the 70s. And my parents are very strict. And if you talk to most Asian families, cannabis, drugs, anything is like very looked down upon. If like our friends who are Asian in the cannabis space, they probably haven't spoke to their parents about what they do, honestly. But when my parents came, they knew nothing about U.S. culture. It just turned out that the people that took care of us, like taught my parents English, babysat me, they were all cannabis growers, consumers. So the fact that my parents are from China, extremely strict, and they're totally cool with cannabis, just kind of gives, you know, insight that if you can embrace it within a community, like that's how normalization happens. So
can we shift to New York for a sec?
yes,
Because you spend, in addition to all the stuff you just talked about for the past few minutes, like you spend a lot of time thinking about New York.
Yes.
And what's happening there. And it's been a big week.
It's been, so it's been a bit of a shit show. Like
I think you're giving it a lot of credit.
It's been a mess. You know, there was a lot of hope. So I've been in New York since 2006 and started a education platform called On the Revel in 2016. And we've just been, you know, creating events. It's turned into more of a conference. Also, we added a trade show this year. We do festivals because in New York, you can't really have industry of cannabis without giving homage to culture, because it's always been in New York. You know, a lot of West Coast people say, well, we created cannabis culture. And I'm like, that is true. But New York uses cannabis to create global culture. So we had a lot of hopes. I mean, it's the only state that has, you know, had legislation with social equity built in from the beginning. The execution of that has been rough.
I was waiting for the word.
Yeah, it's been rough. You know, I think it's more amplified because, you know, New York is on the international stage. It's also like, you know, in the U.S., a very prominent city. So, you know, New York's extra, but with all the things that happen, it's magnified and it's extra. So there has been a settlement agreed upon by the Fiore case with the OCM. I don't know if I should say my feelings about that, but
it'd be fun if you did.
Oh my God, I'm like, white
tell
bros,
you.
can you please stop throwing your legal temper tantrums to like take down. It's like, it's so lame. It's just like, I can't have it, so no one else can. And I'm like, all you guys had to do was wait another 3 to 4 months. That's all you had to do, because applications are open. You could do that. But anyways, I could say more, but maybe that should go off the record.
I like what you said. It's good. Just say it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just,
Lulu.
yeah.
Then you just back it up and be like, I'm high right now.
I'm high right now. Exactly. No, I just think, like, give people a chance, right? Like, if you, we'll talk more offline.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I do want to thank you for coming in, because you were, I think, our third guest today, and it's early. It's early. We're on East Coast time. It's like,
I know, it was hard. It was hard. I didn't go out too late, though. I got home at 1, so
1
a.m.
I'd been sleeping. I was already up at 1, having slept like
You
5
haven't
hours.
slept yet. You've still been up since last night.
I know I have. I went to bed so early. I'm old and I like to go to bed early, especially in Vegas. Actually, I find it's like after hours.
Great early bedtime.
It is. Yeah, it's like I'm gonna go to bed. It's fun to just slink away. But I do want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for the innovative campaigns that you guys are putting on, and the groundbreaking, frankly, Pornhub takeover that I didn't notice in real time, but I
think we're
did.
doing another one within. So it was an all-state campaign.
Right.
I think we're doing Michigan and Minnesota or Missouri.
Huge porn cities.
All the
Huge
M's.
porn states.
Yeah.
What is the
all the M's.
audience you're trying to reach on, like, Pornhub?
I think,
Like-
Pornhub is just
Massive.
big in general. I think, I don't
Just a big
know.
audience.
It's just a
Yeah.
big audience.
Okay.
Like that's what our mission is. Like, we want to hit mainstream, and we don't mind being provocative, right? Like, that's how conversations start. But the funny thing is, like, we got trolled by, I call them the brides of Jesus, for sex trafficking or anti-porn, and I'm like,
Sorry, the brides of.
I call them the brides of Jesus, because I look at their Instagram and they're like all in their bikinis, sucking on straws, licking popsicles, and I'm like, you're really going to be giving us shit? Well, like, be provocative. I'm all about you doing whatever. Be you, love your body, do your thing, but don't be a hypocrite.
It actually has a cannabis tie-in. Well, Pornhub's Canadian. That's one thing, but was recently bought within the past 2 or 3 years by someone who. It is. It's based in Montreal, and they got bought by a Canadian financier whose first foray was in Canopy.
Oh, yes.
One of the original Canopy
I
co-founders.
mean, it kind of, you can't have conversations about, destigmatizing cannabis with also having conversation about, like, destigmatizing, sexuality and sex work. Like, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, they kind of go together.
It's like the Holy Trinity.
But people, like, flipped out. Like, you put two sins together. That's not,
my
that's bad. I'm like, all right.
Only one at a time.
Have you been to Vegas?
Only one at a time. Only one
The
at
whole
a
city
time.
is premised on that. Lulu, thank you so much for stopping by. We look forward to connecting with you as things go on, and good luck both with the Cannabis Media Council, but also all things New York.
Thank you. Great to see you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
She is Lulu. I am Jay, Krista, Jeremy. We are coming up with another lens of what's happening in Minnesota with Layli Fatahi and Laura Mon Ginsberg. We'll be right back with them, and then we'll be talking Minnesota up next. Thanks, Lulu.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
welcome back to Cultivated Live from Planet 13. One quick show note, I think we're calling it. You may hear construction noise because while Planet 13 is an amazing place, it is about to get more amazing with, I think, a museum, a consumption lounge, awesome stuff. You can't see it off camera back here, but also yesterday we were watching gummies be made in their glassed-in kitchen. Today I think it's beverages, which is a good lead-in to our guests. Laura and Laylee, thank you so much for being here from Blunt Strategies. We're going to talk Minnesota. And everybody says Minnesota beverages because you can get beverages at Total Wine. Cannabis beverages, right? But tell us a little bit.
That's only the beginning of where you can get them.
I want to hear the rest of it, but give us a background about Blunt Strategies first, and then we'll get into the rest of it.
Yeah, so Blunt Strategies is Minnesota's first and I think still only full-service public affairs consultancy dedicated to the cannabis industry. We started in 2019 on the heels of when the Farm Bill opened up the industrial hemp program, and Minnesota started having a lot of folks beginning to expand into that market, and we knew that they would be strong allies towards moving towards an even more expanded market for adult use. And so we started with doing a lot of the grass tops advocacy to bring adult use legalization at the same time that we were working with that legal hemp industry. And now that we have legal adult use, we're now working with clients in that realm.
And it seems to be a pretty unique path from an outsider's perspective. I think it's how it's happening, but there are legal cannabis, like THC products, available outside of adult use cannabis dispensary that is more normalized than I think in almost every legal market at this point. How does that affect, I guess, normalization? How does it affect conversations with grass tops, for your perspective?
Oh, I mean, the joke nationally was that Minnesota accidentally legalized edibles, and there was nothing.
That's what Jeremy wrote, by the way.
That's my fault. I mean, that's my fault. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was funny because I think for the Republicans it was accidental, but for the rest of us it was absolutely not accidental. I mean, for one, these products were already on the market, and the legislators that really led on that legalization, it was to ensure that there was regulation around it. But we also knew that once those low-dose hemp-derived products were on the market and consumers were able to access THC, and they would, start to access those products, that it would reduce the stigma and create that glide path towards full adult use legalization. But yeah, in Minnesota, you can find hemp-derived THC products of all varieties. I mean, it's not just in, Total Wine and places like this. You find it at the bowling alley, my ski lodge has it, when you go to the chalet, you can get it at the hair salon, at the hotels are starting to put them in their rooms, bridal boutiques.
Really?
When you're getting your
everywhere.
bridal dress,
Yeah.
instead of getting a glass of champagne, you can have a nice cannabis beverage. So it's very normalized, and it means the consumer base is fundamentally different as well. We see people of all ages. Of all legal ages.
Right. That was implied.
Consuming
always
the
implied.
products. It's exciting.
And it also just led to a different kind of creativity, I think, in our market. So, as Laylee was saying, it opened this door, and to your question, it did reduce stigma because people that had not had any opportunity to consider what cannabis could be to them besides what they maybe thought smoking and maybe end of list. So this was a really great way to just kind of unleash the market to think about all the different ways that it could add access and entry points and have a whole spectrum of experiences that people could try and consider. And that was something that I think is really special in Minnesota and has really maintained even after we've gotten past the legal legislation moment. As we're waiting on the full legal industry to come online, we still have these amazing products and ideas and different ways that people are connecting with cannabis already well in effect.
I wonder, thinking ahead to like a more, not a more normalized market, but like where there are adult use cannabis dispensaries in Minnesota, there has been this preamble to it that has pretty wide acceptance. Like how is the new legal framework going to impact the old companies doing business? Like have you started thinking about that with like regulators and stuff, but also the companies, have they started thinking about how they make this? It's not even a transition. It's just like there's going to be new markets, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the Minnesota model of legalization, and this was very intentional. It is predicated on creating a marketplace that is dominated by small local craft businesses. And so a lot of these businesses are ones that have already been operating in this low-dose hemp-derived space. And it's been great because it's allowed them to establish their brands, their products, their footprints, their consumer bases, their supply chains, all of those things. But it means now for even new companies that want to come in, a lot of them are able to get started now in that hemp-derived space, or they're coming in adult use, but the way they're thinking about setting up, say, a dispensary, I think is really informed by what the consumer experience is right now purchasing those low-dose products. I think in Minnesota, the idea of having, a dispensary where you're coming in and there's a foyer and you have to show, that's not what people expect, because they're already used to going into a shop that's selling THC products and interacting with the product, similar to what you would with anything else. So I think that's really going to inform what the dispensary culture is. Minnesota's also allows for things like consumption lounges and things like that. We know in the Twin Cities that's going to be a big thing. It's supported by local policymakers as well as by the general public. So I think it's just...
I heard they're going to move MJ Biz to the Twin Cities.
Oh, we welcome
Oh,
it.
I heard that too. I definitely heard that. Yeah, it should absolutely not be in December if they're going to do it.
I'm thinking February in Minnesota.
Yeah, even more ideal. No, it's been really interesting though, and then this has been a lot of the work of Blunt Strategies now. We obviously were on the front lines with the legislative process and getting that accomplished, and we've been building this business, as Laylee mentioned, the whole time as well. And so we've been working with these companies, building relationships, understanding how they see themselves in the market. And now we're working actively with them to help them think about what is that transition. Do I want to transition? The beautiful thing is that you can stay where you are in the market that already exists in Minnesota. You can you can do so many things, and that's what we've been working with clients on, is helping them think about, okay, what is my business plan? What is my business model? What are the regulatory considerations I might want to be thinking about? And then that's where we really pride ourselves on also bringing in some great partnerships, to make sure that we can really help people think about that holistically.
And what is the ecosystem? I mean, I think the fundamental way in which, the way we're engaging with clients that's both exciting and different is that these guys don't see one another as competition. They see each other as being partners in, again, building this ecosystem that is supposed to be dominated by small local businesses. And so that's really exciting. And working with them, it's not just what's your business plan, blah, 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 but it's how do we bring all of you together to build the infrastructure all of you need to be successful, bring a lot of collaboration. And I mean, fundamentally, these guys all collaborated in helping to draft the legislation.
Right. Yeah.
And that's...
I was going to say, I think that's also part of the uniqueness in Minnesota is that, because we don't have ballot initiatives, because we had to go through a legislative process, there was so much education that had to happen and bringing people along to help them, understand how were we actually going to get from A to B. And yeah, we got to bring in all these people and learn with them and grow with them, and they really got to see how that was going to come about. And I think that has led to a different kind of skin in the game for them, and has certainly helped to educate us, because we got to talk to a lot of different people about the different permutations about how they wanted to enter the market. And I do think that it has led to a more successful and more collaborative, to use Laylee's word, which I think is exactly right, infrastructure that's already baked into this thing, because folks are already coming from a place of, we did this together, now we're going to grow it together.
Can you talk about your own career path to date? Because I imagine maybe 15 years ago you never thought you'd be in this position, starting a legal affairs consultancy for cannabis companies. So how did you see the opportunity, and how did you have the courage to go for it?
Well, I mean, I think if I really think back, me ending up in the cannabis industry is probably the least surprising thing ever. But my pathway to this was, I was in academia. I'm a lawyer by training. I worked in academia on large kind of multidisciplinary, I worked on governance structures for emerging technology. So things where it's emergent and you have to shape it. You don't have regs in place. You don't have norm standards
Sounds familiar.
in place. And it ended up being really applicable in this area. But, where Laura and I really started is, political consultants. We're strategists, and we're both cannabis enthusiasts. We wanted to work in a legal cannabis industry, but we wanted it to be one that that would be exciting and be a kind of model we would be excited to lead. And so it was just, I think, that natural penchants we have for political advocacy and activism that led us to take up this cause.
I have a major in English and a French
Same,
minor, so super, super helpful. My background was in marketing for high-tech software, so not quite as crystal clear, but certainly similar themes of how do you take something that is complex and difficult or even dry and find a way to connect it with people's emotions, connect it with their desire to do something, to be called to action. I like to joke that Laylee's the architect and I'm the carpenter, which isn't to say that Laylee's not like doing crown molding sometimes, because she's absolutely down with me in the carpentry as well. But she really approached me with this idea, and we were both at points in our career where it was like, okay, we could keep doing what we're doing, or we could try something new. And that was how we started our working together. And then Blunt Strategies, it was this very natural progression of the skills we had built, the networks we had built, the interest we had built, and not for nothing, knowing that we had the privilege to enter that space and be able to do some of the code switching that needed to happen from the grassroots to the grass tops in order to make it happen in Minnesota.
And we continue to do work outside of cannabis. We do a lot of work in housing, and we're a public benefit business, so we work on a lot of these issues.
Environmental
and
sustainability.
Where that becomes important is in places like the legislature, because when we're working on things, we're not always trading on that same political capital. It's not cannabis political capital. It's, these folks know us from being engaged in the community in other realms as well. And that's become important now in cannabis with the clients that we work with. It's a lot about in addition to opening a dispensary, what are the other things you're going to be doing to contribute to your community? And these folks are very civically engaged, as Minnesotans generally are.
Yeah.
And is required by a lot of cannabis companies. We had on Tahir Johnson in Trenton, New Jersey, and he was an advocate, and now he's going to be an owner-operator. And in between, it's basically real estate development and municipal affairs and state affairs, and the sign-off from every, you really need to be on it to get to day zero, and then you need to be a great operator to get to day beyond that. But it's really, we've heard the story 3 times today, and it's not even 10 o'clock in the morning, but it really is a very compelling thing. And I just want to zoom out for a sec to sort of end on this note. Minnesota, in the neighborhood, is going to have a lot of states that are not legal yet, legal from adult use perspective, but are nibbling at the edges, I think. Do you think that's going to move Wisconsin? Do you think it's going to move South Dakota? And South Dakota has a history with it, but what do you think is going to happen? What is the impact of Minnesota on, of course, Minnesotans, but actually in the neighborhood as well?
Yeah, I think, I think it does help move the dial a bit in some of these other states, but I think we had to take, by nature of, as Laura was saying, we don't have ballot initiatives. We have a divided government. We, are the only state that's been able to legalize by legislation without a Democratic supermajority, and for a long time we had split legislature. The culture of Minnesota in many ways is similar to a lot of the states that have yet to legalize, especially the ones around it. And so we had to go about the process of legalizing very differently than other states have. It had to be locally led. It had to resonate with local sensibilities. The fundamental approach to coalition building needed to be different. And so that template for legalization, where you have a national group come in, they prop up, a state campaign, and that's not going to work in a lot of these other states. So now where really our interest in engaging with other states, especially the ones around us that haven't legalized yet, is to go in and not say this is how you duplicate what we did, but these are sort of the fundamental, lessons for, these things like how to do the coalition building, the messaging, etc., differently, in ways that we hope kind of helps supercharge them. Also, a state like Wisconsin, they also have a lot of businesses that are producing hemp-derived products, many of whom have relationships in Minnesota or are also operating in Minnesota. And those folks, just as in Minnesota, they became really critical advocates and helped move this along. We're hoping that in Wisconsin we can do the same thing, get folks organized, animated, so that they're using sort of their commercial activities to begin driving some political activism towards that.
We also don't mind a little bit of Minnesota exceptionalism. So, absolutely, we want to see this federally legalized. We want to see other states be able to do what they need to do to get where we are. And we welcome anyone and everyone, whether they're from our surrounding states that have not yet legalized or anywhere else, to come to Minnesota and see how great it really is.
Yeah, well, it's generally a good place to be. The state surrounded by not legal states for the businesses on the border. Like you think of like Arizona and like those dispensaries do crazy business, like even in Southern Nevada, right? Like it's just amazing. Well, I think Minnesota's very lucky to have you both. And I think having known you prior to this conversation, it really does take advocates, business people, smart folks from a variety of fields that have backgrounds like yours to actually get it across the finish line. And so thank you for the work you do. Good luck to you as Minnesota continues this path. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks
Our
for having
pleasure.
us.
Thanks for having us.
Great. We were with Blunt Strategies, which was lovely to talk about Minnesota and even the surrounding area, what it means. We'll be right back after a short break with Brittany Melville to talk about Forte Operations and what that's all about and what it means for cannabis operators, especially dispensaries. Thank you so much. We'll be right back with Brittany from Planet 13.
All right. Thank you.
Cultivated live from Planet 13 in Las Vegas. I am Jay Rosenthal. You are Krista. You are Jeremy. And you are Brittany Melville. And we're going to talk about all the work you do. But we are here live, Planet 13 in Las Vegas. We are midway through our second day here at Planet 13. Brittany, tell us what Forte Operations is and why it's important for especially cannabis dispensary operators.
Well, first off, team, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, and nice to see some familiar Canadian faces.
They let us in.
No kidding. I got interrogated, ripped
really?
apart my whole bag, yes. And I had oil of oregano of Shabaz's, and they thought it was weed, so that delayed me another
Seriously,
half
you
an
literally
hour.
had oregano?
Yes, oil of oregano.
Oh,
yeah.
oil of
and they
oregano.
thought it was weed.
But don't they know that helps you not get a cold?
Apparently not.
Okay.
Americans. Just kidding.
Easy.
So Forte Operations. Essentially, we are a team of retail strategists that have been opening and operating dispensaries across North America. Our team's been doing it for about 5.5 years. So anybody who is a new licensee and, at the early stages, never opened a store before, you know that there's a ton of decisions to be made. There's a ton of money that you need to spend, partners that you need to vet. So we essentially support people in accelerated boot camp that gives them one-on-one consulting anywhere from customer journey, product planning, marketing planning, people planning, compliance, custom SOPs, your training. So you can take our boot camp at any cadence you prefer, depending on the state of your business. And throughout this entire process, we really help build and customize all of your tools, resources, and set you up for opening success and ultimately withstand market saturation. Krista, I'm sure you've seen this also, but so many stores have just rushed to open and all go in the back of house or open binders and the place is running rogue. You can tell they're hemorrhaging money from every orifice, and maybe it looks on the books that they're making good numbers right now. However, they're bleeding, and our goal at Forte is to really take that time, front load their time, set them up for success so that they have a repeatable business model and they can go and focus on store 2 and store 3 and know that every single operational nuance is completely standard, set up for success. I always say retail is detail, so making sure that all of your SOPs are in place, your team members are trained, everybody speaks the same language, and that you're set up for operational excellence.
Talk a little bit about, this is the question Jeremy usually asks,
Yep.
but talk about a little about your background before Forte, because it is obviously relevant.
Great question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I learned from the best. Talk a little bit about sort of your background that brought you to today.
Yeah, well, I was living in Indonesia. I was living in Bali for a couple of years. I started a business out there in my early 20s, and I've been in retail my whole professional career. And cannabis, as you know, in Canada, legalized federally 5 years ago in October. So I had the opportunity to open the first store in Canada, which was Tokyo Smoke in Winterpeg, Manitoba. Thought I'd be doing that for 6 months, and I'd move back to the islands, but fell in love with...
So you moved from, hold on, can we just go?
Yeah.
Can we just talk about that, the transition from Indonesia to, is it rural Manitoba?
Not rural,
Okay.
but Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Okay, I thought I didn't
Rural
I
enough.
didn't mean that was not a
Sorry
slight to
to
anybody, but
Manitobans,
I didn't know if it was Winnipeg. Sorry.
Yeah. So, anyways, so we came and opened the first couple Tokyo Smokes there. And then I fell in love with the space, the challenge, jumped ship and started my own consulting agency where we support independent retailers. I saw the big box shops receiving beneficial treatments in terms of data deals, cheaper accessory prices, obviously having, an abundance of stores across the country, you're going to get a lot of advantages that mom and pop shops wouldn't get. So I started an agency to support independent retailers, opened the largest store in Canada, and opened Drake and Forty's store, helped them launch their brand, and then most recently been spending a lot of time in the US supporting independent retailers get first to market and set them up for success.
So if I'm taking your boot camp, I want to open a
Yep.
dispensary. What am I doing and what am I learning?
So again, it's completely customizable to wherever you are in your journey. Let's say you haven't even signed a lease yet.
Yeah, just starting.
That is
Yeah.
the most ideal spot for us to come in, because I've come into projects where people have signed 6,000 square foot leases, and they've called their hardware and software providers, and they're like, gear me up with 30 iPads. I'm going to have all these cash registers. And at that point, it's almost too late. Like, aside from this store, there aren't very many stores that can have that large of a footprint and be successful long-term with market saturation. So our ideal spot to start is right after you've received your license, or if you're in the early processes or just about to receive your license, and we can kind of customize the sessions to however you feel fit. So customer journey and like store planning is usually within the first. Financial planning we typically go through, so you can help budget the rest of your project. People planning would probably be next. Partner planning, we walk through and support you in vetting all of your partners, because licensees do have people trying to sell them things every day, saying you need $4,000 SEO optimization, you need this text messaging campaign, although it's illegal over here, you need this loyalty program, even though we can't do that in this state. So I'm here to be like, now save the money, spend it here, let's layer that on maybe 6 months down the road once we've secured everything, and move at a strategic space that is going to be successful for you. Yeah.
The first conversation we had today is with someone who's about to open in 6 weeks.
Cool.
And he was talking, I think he was talking about everything he's learned up to now, like up to day one, right? He's learned to be a real estate developer in many ways, like construction manager. He's been a public affairs expert. He's been an advocate.
Yeah.
He's hiring people. Like, it's a lot to get to day one. Like, and I think some people say, well, you're close to the finish line. That's amazing. And he said, no, that's both the finish line in one sense, but it's also it's the starting line. And I think that is a unique challenge in cannabis, is that so much is put on getting to day one, that day two, which is the day you're open, is like hard.
Yeah.
And how do you, having seen it from both sides, like people about to open, but also having open shops yourself, like what are the surprises people see, like first day, week, month, that they just blows their mind?
You know what I've seen so often is their network isn't set up securely.
Oh.
Curate. Their network isn't set up, and if it is a busy store and your bandwidth can't handle that level of traffic, sometimes tills go down. If you have everything on Bluetooth and nothing's hardwired, you don't have backup plans, and if a busy store, the cash goes down for half an hour, sometimes that's like 20 grand in a big busy jump. So that's probably number one. And number two, if it's an early market where you don't have a lot of people that have been working in cannabis dispensaries before, it's a huge learning curve. I've been in retail my entire professional career, 17 years, and this is unlike any retail. It's very challenging. You're dealing with a plant that changes all the time. It yields different. You're not getting the same clothing coming in every season at the same price. So navigating that on top of regulations, compliance, inventory, it is challenging.
Yeah, it is. People find that out pretty quickly.
Definitely.
And then what are some of the, not big pivots, but what are some of the big changes retailers make from their like best laid plans before they opened to then? Like, is it like, okay, we can only really have 2 registers open all the time because of these things, because we can't afford the more people to staff it? Like, is it a people issue? Is it an operations issue? Is it an inventory issue? Is it regulatory?
So you said, what are the biggest changes people make?
Yeah.
Positive changes, mature and entrepreneurial licensees make are ways to bring in additional sources of revenue through pop-ups, brand deals, shelf pay-to-play events coming to play. So there are other avenues of revenue stream you can bring in as an experienced, motivated operator, because we all know the margins in this space are razor thin. So you kind of have to get creative in that sense. So in a positive note, I've seen so many successful operators pivot into a couple different businesses, selling data, scraping data, and really use their experience in their store to their benefit that way, as a catalyst into so many other ventures.
Yeah. And when you're here, talking to people
Yeah.
here, but also on the trade show floor. Like, what is your sense? You've been in the industry a long time.
Yeah.
A long time, like we all have, even though we're all so young. How could we be in an industry for a long time? Like, what is different now from talking to people who are in an industry now that's a little bit more mature than it was, say, 2-3 years ago, where people were, not also everybody was gung ho, like this was going to be the biggest thing ever. I think it's a much more realistic expectation now of what the industry is like. Like, are you seeing that same thing when you're talking to both your clients, but also just general conversation?
It's a good question. In terms of industry maturity, in certain states, or obviously in Canada, there is. However, I'll walk into a state like New York, for example, that's in its infant stages, and they are making the exact same mistakes we made 5 years ago. And I have to hold everything inside of me to not just jump on till and jump in there and help and support and correct these people, because come take a walk in Toronto dispensaries or walk down Queen Street, and you will get a ton of valuable insights into how to start your business, because we made the mistakes 5 years ago. You'll see stores have closed because they spent $500,000 on their renovations. They thought they were going to have this grandiose art piece in here that was going to drive traffic to their one lonely store, when ultimately that money could have gone into expanding to location number 2. So I don't know if I answered your question there or pivoted onto another, but...
Well, I was going to say you can walk through Queen West and
Yeah.
sometimes in the
Somebody
future
learning?
you can still see inside some of those stores if you put your arm like this right through the
Exactly.
closed sign.
Exactly.
Like a museum.
Yeah, it's like an archive of closed stores. But that is, and I often think about this, like, is that the best path for new markets, to like let as many stores open as possible, open and fail as quickly as possible? Because that we saw in Ontario, like that is the fastest and best way to like launch a market, give people like lots of access to brick and mortar retail. And otherwise it's slow. And otherwise the unregulated market just grows and grows and grows every day that you prolong, legal dispensaries on every corner.
I've spent time in both markets where there are open markets with no mandatory distance in between the stores, and unfortunately the mom and pop shops that have spent all of their life savings into putting it into a dispensary that's been their dream because they've been growing weed for the last 20 years, they'll have a large MSO come maybe even right beside them, and as we call it in Canada, the Horton hug them out. So like Tim Hortons, they'll come right next door to a nice family-owned cafe. They can drive their margins down and push them out. So
It's called a Horton's Hug.
Yeah, it's called the Horton Hug. Dave Cote.
Oh,
It's a great term.
but he was on the hugging side of it. He worked at Tim Hortons, right? He worked for Tim Hortons.
Yeah, so it is tough in that sense in an open market. And although people can open quickly, although sometimes regulators get a bottleneck there, it is tough for the independents, because you will get MSOs come in and be able to operate at a much lower price point, which ultimately will drive you out of business.
Amazing. Brittany, I want to thank you for taking time and sharing your expertise and being a good Canadian fighting the fight out there. I like that a lot. I also like that you don't spend winters in Winnipeg anymore, so that's you're gonna spend it somewhere else a little bit warmer. So thank you so much for joining us here today at Planet 13 for Cultivated Live, and we'll obviously connect with you probably on the flight back as well. But thank you for your time, and we're gonna be right back to Planet 13 Cultivated Live. We have one of two guests coming up because I see them both. Diana Eberlein from the Cannabis Beverage Association and Source, or David Schweedy, who I also see from Heritage Cannabis. We'll be right back with one of those two people momentarily. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Hello, this is Jay Rosenthal and Krista and Jeremy. We are live at Planet 13 for Cultivated Live. We have a great guest, and there's actually something fun happening at the same time as this guest is coming on. Diana Eberlein, you're with Source,
Yep.
but also the Cannabis Beverage Association. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It doesn't happen a lot, or maybe ever, but we're going to talk about cannabis beverages while cannabis beverages are being canned across the way. It's pretty... I like how you organize that.
It's mesmerizing to watch a canning line.
Yes.
I think everyone should have a moment and take it in.
It's really something, and this is not a massive one because it's their show kitchen, but
Yeah.
they really do. Yesterday they were making gummies by the bucket
There's a
full.
bunch of gummies sitting right there, and they look great.
They do look great. When they sift the sugar, I like that a lot. Talk a little bit about Source first, and then we'll talk about we'll zoom out and talk cannabis beverages.
Source does water-soluble emulsion technology.
Okay.
We entered the space primarily in beverage in Washington State, which is known for their high-dose, small formats, 100 milligram, 2-ounce shots. We're known for our superior flavor profile and also the scalability. We've been able to bring can to all of their markets in the cannabis space, as well as help them expand into their hemp D9, which has caused quite the boom in beverage this year. So we're excited about beverage, but we also work in any CPG, anything that can be processed where you can infuse water, whether it's liquid or powder, we can work with that. So we work with gummies and edibles and everything. But I'm really personally passionate about beverage. It's the only way I consume cannabis. And I think most of the people at our company entered this space because we had a passion for beverage in particular.
I like it.
Yeah.
What were you doing? This is the question Jeremy always asks, but what were you doing before this?
Not cannabis.
Okay.
I never consumed cannabis until I was in my 30s and I moved to Seattle, obviously one of the first legal markets. I was a dare baby that totally believed the gateway drug scenario that they fed us, and when I got to Seattle, everyone was consuming cannabis. I worked in entertainment marketing before. There were definitely other drugs in entertainment marketing that you see people consuming. I didn't touch those either. Got to
Because we
Seattle.
weren't in beverage form.
Yeah. I mean, we're looking at the psychedelics. That's the next wave, right? But when I got to Seattle, I noticed everyone was consuming cannabis. And I was like, there's got to be something to this. There's people having very successful lives, doctors, lawyers, parents, and I thought there must be something to this. So I started dabbling. I've always considered myself kind of a human guinea pig, willing to try things, sometimes more than I should, to figure out if it's right for me. I got lucky, got a really good bud tender one day that said, "What are you trying to achieve?" And I don't even think I knew the answer to that question, but he saw that I was in there every other week picking up low dose stuff, and that's all I knew is that low dose was my game. And he's like, "You should try this drink mixer." And that was 8 years ago, definitely before the wave of beverage we're seeing now. And it was the only thing that worked for me. It was able to kind of curb my anxiety, and I microdose throughout the day now. And I was like, my friends don't know about this. And if they knew about this, this would be their avenue of consumption. This is the future of cannabis consumption as far as I'm concerned. But they're not going to buy it at the existing retail the way it existed especially in Seattle, which definitely still had that grunge punk rock feel. It's a great market, don't get me wrong, but it definitely has a certain aesthetic, especially in downtown. And I was like, my parents are never walking into one of these shops, but my mom could benefit from this. So I entered the space and started helping brands with marketing and creating experiences where people could try these products. Ended up meeting the CEO of Source, and I was telling him about the product that I really liked. He's like, "It's powered by us." He's like, "That's my product." And and it was kind of before the drink mixers were really something people were aware existed. And so I started working for Source back 5 years ago now, and now chair of the Cannabis Beverage Association, because I want to bring more awareness to the category. It's definitely a category that isn't top of mind for people when they walk into a dispensary or even think about cannabis. So our goal is to bring awareness to the category and put these great products, and the ones we talked about that taste so good, in front of consumers so that they know this is an option.
Yeah.
When you think about retail environments, because you're at this really interesting intersection of having brand, having product, and then you have all of these retail relationships to essentially support that. When talking with retailers and thinking about the presence of the category, what are some of the core things that you address with maybe an inventory buyer or somebody who's deciding to bring beverages in to fulfill some level of their assortment?
There's so many things that make beverage a little bit more difficult to sell in the shop. One is these stores were not necessarily laid out for room for refrigerators. So oftentimes the most approachable category for consumption for a newbie in cannabis is tucked away in the back of the store and the least approachable physically. So a lot of times we talk to retailers about how to make the beverage more top of mind for the bud tender to promote, but also just something they can touch, feel, see the label. Having those refrigerators at point of sale. I mean, we've all seen traditional retail. Bed Bath & Beyond has beverages at checkout, and it's because it's an easy add-on. So there's an opportunity for bud tenders to add a beverage or two very quickly to their average cart size by having it right there next to checkout. There's also obviously an education factor. A lot of people don't understand that the experience of beverage is very different than a gummy or another method in terms of the onset time. They don't really, I think there are some consumers that assume it's a one and done, kind of like you pop a gummy and you wait it out. This is something you're sipping on. You're sometimes building your high. It's sessionable. It can be sessionable. So I think there's a lot of different components to it, but I think the main thing is actually making sure that the beverage aren't tucked away in the back and making them something that the consumer can actually ask a question about because they're right there.
It's interesting that we were talking to Theory Wellness, so East Coast dispensary operator, but a lot of stores and very successful ones. They're building a new facility where they have 2 doors. So basically 2 different facilities, same location. One is like a liquor store setup that's just going to have beverages.
Beverages only, yeah.
Beverages only. So it's not a dispensary operation. Well,
it's a dispensary operation.
That's just beverages.
With a focus on beverages.
And the other one is the traditional dispensary operation, right? Because they have seen in their own data that there are people that just want beverages, like you, but also the experience can be daunting to go, especially in Massachusetts, where it's like walking into a prison to go buy weed. But the way they're thinking about it is like, are there ways to actually almost create a different experience for consumers?
And it's true because our target consumer, where we're going to see the growth from cannabis beverages, is not necessarily the existing cannabis consumer. It's more mainstream, people looking to replace beer, wine, alcohol, things like that. So creating an atmosphere that resembles that and makes them feel comfortable is definitely preferred. Obviously, our goal would be in the future to have these low-dose beverages sitting next to seltzers, Bud Lights, like we're seeing in Minnesota.
Right.
Which is, again, no one saw Minnesota coming in as the pioneer in cannabis beverages, but we'll take it. And we're seeing that traction pick up as a result of it being placed where our target consumer goes on a regular basis.
I think at the beginning you talked about nano emulsion technology. Dumb it down for me. So what is that and why is it challenging to make a cannabis beverage tasty?
So, I mean, it really shouldn't be challenging if you're working with the right emulsion. Emulsion technology is essentially, it's not new to beverage. They use this with flavors, they've used it with terpenes, they use it with hops. So this is not new in beverage by any sense of the word. It's new to cannabis, and this is obviously a new consumption method for cannabis. So I think it's gotten a lot of attention as a result. The way we apply our technology, though, is different because the active ingredient being cannabis, THC, CBD, the minors, they all react differently, and cannabis has proven to be trickier due to the flavor profile and the fact that this is an intoxicating, functional ingredient. So the dosage is more important with this particular product than vitamin B because it's not going to give you any sort of intoxicating feeling. So what we do is we break down the distillate into tiny little particles, and you enrobe it in material that disguises the body and makes your body, when it's digesting it, see it as water. That means it doesn't have to go through the liver to essentially be emulsified there, which would delay the onset time, which is why gummies and other distillates take longer, and the onset time can be between an hour 30 minutes. With ours, because it's being digested in the intestinal tract instead of going through that process, it's between 10 and 15 minutes. So similar to alcohol, if you're sipping a beer, that's the experience you're having here. I mean, yes, you could shoot the beverage and have all of that experience in 10 to 15 minutes and have it last about an hour and 30 minutes. But if you're building your high, drinking a low-dose beverage, making it sessionable like beer, you're having a very similar experience. I think one of the biggest differences that I don't think gets talked about nearly as much is there's a consumer behavioral difference in terms of how people drink cannabis versus drinking alcohol. When you get to the high where you feel good, you don't crave more the way you do with alcohol. Like, you know how it is when you're at a bar or a party and you're drinking and your drink's empty and you're like, I need another one. You get into this cyclical idea like, oh, I need another one, because you're constantly chasing that good feeling you probably had at 2 drinks, and now you're just going down that downward spiral, but you're still thinking you can get back there.
Never done that.
Not this week.
But with cannabis beverages, you kind of get to that high and you don't crave to be higher. You learn your tolerance, you kind of understand where you are, and then you sip on Diet Coke or seltzer or mocktail and you enjoy yourself. So it's different, but it is, and I think that's one of the things that consumers, when they go, if they're not familiar with cannabis and they're going to a dispensary for the first time, they don't even know that a gummy or a beverage is going to have a different experience, a different onset time. They kind of assume and edibles are all the same. And that's one thing when we talked about education at the retail level, that's something really important, that whole story needs to be told. Not just it hits quick. It needs to say, hey, this is something that's more consistent. It's going to hit within 10 to 15 minutes, but the offset is also between hour 15, hour 30. But just like all things, learn your tolerance. When you go off to college, your parents are like, learn your tolerance.
Yeah,
Don't
right.
be the first kid to throw up from, learning that you can't drink the whole bottle of Bacardi. This is, just like anything else. We want to teach people how to consume these products and enjoy them. Start slow and low, just like you would with anything else.
Can we zoom out a little bit?
Yeah.
Talk about technology, talk about source, but talk about the Cannabis Beverage Association. Like, talk about what that is, what the structure is, and sort of who's involved and sort of some of the goals.
Yeah, so we're a nonprofit, 100% volunteer-based. We represent all cannabis beverages. So whether it's CBD, hemp D9, any of the minors, THC, we represent the entire category. So our goals are to raise awareness for cannabis beverages, because it wasn't too long ago that I had to tell people what a cannabis beverage was, just by definition. Now, because of Minnesota and hemp D9, they're definitely, the category awareness is up, so I don't have to answer that question as much. But that's one of our big focal points, is making sure people understand that this category not only exists, but the differences between consuming a beverage versus maybe some of the other methods out there. The other thing we focus on is regulatory and standards. We want to see these products, particularly the low-dose beverages, regulated similarly to alcohol. We would like the TTB to regulate. They regulate alcohol and tobacco. We would like to see the TTB regulate these intoxicating cannabinoids, because they deserve to be represented in the same place as alcohol. And that's often what we're promoting them as, is alternatives to alcohol. So we're working on template regulations. We work on standards for testing, so labs actually know how to work with these products and understand and one of the things that you actually touched on, I'm going to go back to this a little bit. The reason that it's important to have emulsion technology that's stable and good in beverage is some of these are sitting on shelves for a couple weeks, right? When you have an intoxicating cannabinoid, you need to know that first sip of that beverage is going to give you the same dose as that last sip. So with our technology, it's homogeneous all the way through. So that means if that can is 10 milligrams, each sip is going to give you the same equal dose all the way through to the bottom. So you know that you're getting exactly what's on that can. You're not getting 5 milligrams of it. It's not scalping to the side of the can. It's not settling to the bottom. You're not getting it all in that first sip, which with an unstable emulsion, that is what happens. You would have scalping, sticking to the can or floating to the top or going to the bottom. Emulsion technology is much, much better now than I think 10 years ago when beverages first started kind of hitting the market. And now we have not only great tasting products, but products that deliver a consistent experience. And that's what the consumer is really looking for, because you're not going and buying a Diet Coke at a store and it tastes different, or it's really sweet at the top, not sweet at the bottom. People are used to having consistency in food and beverage, and that's what we're delivering with these products.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. But what Krista always tells me is that it is perhaps the best way and most visible way, and it's cold, like it comes in a different form for retailers to top up that cart, cross-sell. It's juicy. And when we saw it in Canada, when they started putting the fridge in there, the numbers proved it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things that's really interesting with beverages specifically is that the packaging format has such good physical visibility. Yes. And it's in a familiar format of somebody in the way that they purchase. Like, it's either in a bottle or it's in a can, for example, or glass bottle even. And with all of those functions, it feels familiar to where else you would purchase products elsewhere.
Exactly.
Whereas, how many other environments do you purchase, like, a Mylar bag of something? Not a lot.
Not that many.
Yeah, so even in the familiarity of what product purchasing looks like, it shows up.
They understand that, for the most part, a can is typically a single serving size. They understand. What we do need to educate on, though, is, and this is probably not as much of a focus in Canada because of your dosing caps, but when you go to Seattle, Washington, most of the beverages in those cabinets are 100 milligrams, sometimes in 2-ounce shots. The top 20 SKUs there are 100 milligram SKUs. There aren't a lot of low dose options. So the consumer, if they're looking at a fridge, they might think you start at 100 milligrams because they don't know what that means. They know milligrams from Advil.
Right.
And they look at Celsius that has
Right.
200 milligrams of caffeine. So 100 milligrams, they're like, yeah, okay. If they don't know cannabis, they don't know that that's a high dose. So that's something you have to also kind of explain. And I think that's also why it's important to fill that fridge with a variety of products, not just a couple brands. Beverages sell better next to other beverages, but it has to tell the story, and you have to make it a little bit clear that, maybe it's like the fridge starts with low dose and kind of builds to the higher dose products, just to make it a little bit, again, more approachable for the consumer. Because it is a familiar format, but it's not necessarily a familiar active ingredient.
Right. Well, I love talking about cannabis beverages. I could do it all day, but I can already see people being mad at us.
We're lining them up.
They want to hear about it too, and the people online are as well. But I really appreciate you coming by for sharing the source story, but also the Cannabis Beverage Association.
Yeah.
Do you know the website off the top of your head, or how people can get in touch with you?
Yes.
Other than LinkedIn, which you are there.
Lucky for us, it's cannabisbeverageassociation.com, so it couldn't be easier for you guys to find. And yeah, we're definitely always looking for support, but also other associations that we can align with just in terms of quality standards, things like that. So we're definitely looking for partnerships in that area.
Awesome. Well, we'll link to it when we, not only right now on the stream, but when we post this afterwards as well. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you for having me, guys. This is great.
I'm glad we could. That was Diana Eberlein from Source and from the Cannabis Beverage Association. We'll be right back with David Schweedy from Heritage Cannabis, from Planet 13 and Cultivated Live. We'll be right back.
Awesome.
Welcome back to Cultivated Live from the gummy and beverage manufacturing facility here at Planet 13. This is Krista and Jeremy. We are here with David Schweedy from Heritage Cannabis.
Hello.
We're really lining up the Canadians today,
Wow.
but you have a footprint larger than Canada.
I do.
Tell us about it.
So we're in Missouri, West Virginia, and now New York. Playing around in different areas, but the asset light's our approach, so we have to go in and it has to kind of fit the mold. New York's wonderful right now because it's small today, and you can kind of grab it, and you're not racing like if we were to jump into California, you just need $1 bazillion to compete. So yeah, no, I think we'll just keep our eye on limited license or like slow starting states and throw in.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say you have all these insights from Canada.
Yeah.
You then bring it into some U.S. states.
Yeah.
Where have you seen product either like be developed in the U.S. and or perform differently than what you see in Canada?
So I think we've been lucky because we had a really good, I guess, training ground. And so when we launched in Missouri, it was kind of 3 months cash flow, which was great because we've been developing great flavors in good hardware. Like we've tested the shit out of hardware. It's not like, I wonder if this will work. No, we know it's been running for 3 years. So we're not going to have the return rates and like all these mysteries that would come up on something on a new launch. So we're running the same stuff everywhere. So I think that's been a big part to dropping into new states with kind of tried, tested, and true stuff. And the launches are always really good. And I think the big thing for us is the price is way better. We've actually got programming dollars. We've actually got the ability to market. And our marketing can actually look cool and connect with people. Whereas we've been kind of hamstrung or handcuffed in Canada. So I think, yeah, it's great. It's refreshing. It makes things a little bit easier when you've got, 30, 40, 50% margins, not 12.
Mm-hmm. How do you evaluate a new market to go into? Like, what's an attractive profile? New states or whatever it may be.
I think so for us specifically, it's something that we can actually compete in. So if it's too big, it's too big. We're not going to be able to go in and make an impact at all because there's just too much ground to cover. We can't focus in on a small area or a small subset of people to get deals done and get distribution. And then situations where it's not just 100% pay to play kind of thing where, hey, take my money, I hope this works out. We need to be involved. We're operators. That's what we do. So in every situation that we went into, we're teaching them something. Here, different way to formulate. Here's a different way to fill carts, or here's a different way to look at doing your packaging. And so we have to be able to participate because I think we've been refining for such a long time that we're able to be very efficient day one. And so we want to be involved with our partners and we want to provide value not only financially, but to help them with all the other things that they're going on. It builds a good, loyal relationship that they know they can rely on us going forward.
Do you think new markets are not looking enough to old markets to say this is how like a Heritage does it, we ought to mimic exactly what they're doing? Because it seems to, certainly in the retail level, the same mistakes are just constantly made and remade. Is that the same thing you're finding from a product or brand perspective?
We were having this conversation yesterday. Like, I'm very confused how there's so many different, so from a regulatory and then like a brand and distro perspective, like it's the same. If I go and start up Texas, like, you'd think it'd be pretty easy. You just go and grab New York or go and grab Canada. It's literally online. You just download it and like change the names and you've got like this solid regulation and you just edit all the stuff that everyone complains
it's like
about.
A find and replace.
Yeah, like
find New York, replace with Texas.
Command F.
Yeah, Control F, Texas. Right. Control like find, replace, different state. So that part kind of confuses me because we have a model that we can come up with that is the best of everything. And every time a new state goes to open, that could be the case. So starting from scratch just kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Same said for distribution, marketing, brand, retail. You've got models that are working really, really well. So, I mean, take inspiration from them. Try to not rework everything. And so on our side, yeah, it's the same thing. We've learned what doesn't work and what does work, and you're always still learning. But the things that are working, you have to implement, and you just continue to build a foundation. It's, I guess, you're building a house. So at some point in time, the foundation's going to work. Use that everywhere. Otherwise, it's going to cost you a lot of money.
I think we're also like really biased because all of us have been in the space for a while now, and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Like what you're essentially identifying is when you go into a new market, you don't know to ask those questions, or some of the time, specifically the regulators don't know to ask the questions, so they don't get answered. And that's like, we come at it from an incredibly biased position because we have all of those learnings, especially now that you have had the opportunity to be in multiple new markets open who have also all had pretty different regulatory structures. Like every time now you're like, well, I've seen it happen before. But if you haven't been there, or as a regulator, you don't know to ask those questions, it just is the same thing kind of over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking that an adult in this world that, has or doesn't have children and dresses himself every day can't go, this is out there, how do I do this? Like, they should know how to answer questions. I agree with you, it's kind of shocking, but it's literally happening in every state. They wake up and they're just like, what's cannabis? Where are we? Just jump on and give things a read, and there's people out there that, hey, my job is to answer your questions. You can bring me on, and they'll also be helping out the industry and moving money around to people that have experience and can help them and short circuit the problems that inevitably come up when we already know things that really work.
I'm not speaking in defense of cannabis regulators. They do have, I don't know how big it is or how well organized, they do have like an association of cannabis regulators.
They have a meetup.
No, it's not a meetup.
No, they do a meetup.
Really?
Yes.
Like here, like at the chandelier room. But if they're meeting at the chandelier room, it's not going to help.
No, I feel like this year it was in Arizona.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
Maybe where there was actually like a bunch of regulators all
golfing in Lake Havasu. That makes sense.
Lake Havasu. Well, they have to go to a legal market, so
yeah.
You said a market that I'd actually never heard of. I mean, I've heard of the place, but I've never heard of someone being active in. Did you say West Virginia?
Yeah. I think there's like 52 stores.
Okay.
It's medical only. You're not allowed to sell pre-rolls or anything that you can smoke.
What do people buy?
Flower.
So you can buy flower, but not pre-rolls.
Yeah.
It's a weird distinction.
Yeah. It's the regulators again. They don't know what they're doing with it.
They had too good a time at Lake Havasu.
Yeah. And so bagged flower and vapes.
Okay.
It's like that's the market.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dab jars, so rosins are really popular.
So you can get rosin, but not a pre-roll.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really doing some deep thinking there.
Yeah.
That's a commitment.
That must be good. I mean, let me ask you a question. Like those type of constraints.
Yeah.
Both size, but also product-wise. Yeah. Is that good for your business?
Oh, it's amazing. If they only bought rosin, and you were very quick and good and had rosin dialed, great for you. You're going to take a huge portion of the market. They're laying out things that we're super good at, and pre-rolls is because cultivation's required and we're asset light. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Don't sell pre-rolls. Sell vape carts.
Right.
And we take everybody's flower, turn it into a finished good, and out it goes, and it doesn't expire.
It's like they've rolled out the red carpet.
Yeah, they called me and asked what they should do.
Do away with pre-rolls.
Yeah, I was like, don't even sell flower, just vape carts.
Right, vape carts.
Yeah,
a market only full of vape carts would be good. That would be good for you. You've been in the game a while.
Yeah.
And thinking about the show so far, where it's been today and tomorrow, like, what are you thinking are some trends that you're going to bring back from the show that, like, we're going to have to incorporate some of this thinking into Heritage?
Yeah, so I think you're seeing Nick box vape carts. They're going to blow up. You've got
like an Elf bar?
Yeah, like the Elf bar, like all the Nick style all-in-one pods, because like people are clamoring for innovation. The same 510 vape cart over and over again with a different color and a different logo. Somebody comes out with literally anything else, and everyone like is going to rush to the doors to try this new thing, and everyone's always looking for a leg up. So I think those are going to really pick up pace because they're different, and you can have so many different shapes and styles and variations. So I think that's my pick right now for probably going to be the most money spent, and I think good on the manufacturers, because vape carts are now below $2 a unit. These things are like $4 a unit, so they're getting money back in their jeans on this, bringing out cannabis vapes that look like Nick vapes, and then outside of that, I think that you're just going to start, I think, seeing more retail aggregation and large retail. I think in Ontario, I just saw this morning, they're going to approve up to 150 stores can be owned by one group now.
Seriously.
Because they're having to cater to the groups that are going to be able to fund this stuff. And so just as we see in States and in Canada as a whole, just constant aggregation of assets and funds to be able to support the industry while everyone puts in their 2 cents on how to grow it.
Mm-hmm. I didn't see that this morning.
Yeah, I was just actually about 3.5 seconds ago.
We'll have to put that.
We'll put it in the newsletter. But what is it now? Something way less than that. Is it 25? Is it,
No.
I don't even I can't even remember. Okay. It's very, very low.
150 is a lot, though. Like, there's only...
Yeah, it's basically they've just decided that it's going to be owned by 3, 4, 5 people, and the more you have with the taxation the way that it is, the better chance you have at surviving and paying that tax, and obviously keeping the blood flowing in the ecosystem there. So
I was actually just wondering what it's going to mean for the ground floor of real estate in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
If 3 of them are owned by the same people, like, there's going to be some storefronts open up in our neighborhood that can.
Yeah, and I think they're also very reactive, right? So they must be under pressure because people are wanting to buy stuff and people are wanting to sell stuff, and they're literally limiting the ability for people to financially survive or financially flourish because they've got this thing stuck in the middle.
Which is arbitrary anyway.
And if they're not willing to fund the guys that are wanting to sell and keep them alive,
right,
well, then they're putting people at risk. So I think they're removing the risk.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because I don't know anything. Krista and Jeremy, the people that know stuff here. But like, if you're dealing with way fewer owners in Ontario that account for more stores, with fewer buyers, that could be very good.
Could be very good. It could end companies.
Yes.
It depends
Smaller
how many friends you have. Yeah. It becomes a friendship game.
Yeah.
Like, do you have solid relationships with these chains? No. Sayonara.
Yeah.
Because you can't force product into their stores.
Right.
And that's where I've always said I love the Canadian market, because you kind of always can survive because it's owned by so many people at the retail level. And you can sell through one sheet of paper and everybody gets the same sheet, and you're marketing that sheet and you're like, find me on the sheet, buy my stuff. It's very, very controlled. Whereas like in New York, when we landed a new dispensary today, and it's like, oh my God, this is amazing, one new store, because that took forever. We had to meet the person, give them all the information, have multiple meetings just for one store.
I don't think people in Canada necessarily always appreciate how the way that the industry has been formatted it actually makes operating way easier if you're a retailer or as a brand. I think it has its own constrictions for sure. But when you get into states where you have to manage relationships with all of these individual accounts, as well as those individual accounts don't look the same, wholesale costs might not be the same, product availability might not be the same.
Just getting paid.
Getting paid on terms might not be the same. And so then all of a sudden you've built this level of complexity in operating that doesn't show up in the Canadian
You've got
market
under 20 customers in Canada on a recreational distribution level. And in small states in the U.S., you've got 200 plus.
Right.
And it's obviously a lot more work.
Yeah. David, I appreciate your insight. You're the only person that's spoken about West Virginia that I've ever
You didn't
talked
even know
about.
it existed.
So I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm not going to share any of the information. I'm going to tell people it's only a pre-roll market, and so they might as well stay out.
Yeah, stay out of there.
Stay out of it. David's got it covered. But thank you so much for spending time, sharing your expertise. And dropping knowledge.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you. We are at Planet 13 for Cultivated Live. I'm Jay. This is Jeremy and Krista. We will be right back, I think, with Brad Spearson from Grown In, who's going to tell us about Grown In, of course, but Chicago, Illinois, some other states in the Midwest and what they're up to. So we'll be right back with Brad Spearson. Welcome back to Cultivated Live here at Planet 13 in Las Vegas. I'm Jay, Krista, Jeremy, and Brad.
Hello.
Brad Spears. And Brad, aside from my brother, who is also here, you are the person I've known longest. I don't even know if they know this.
It's we're like brothers.
We are like brothers. We lived on the same freshman dorm.
We did.
Floor, like we were adjacent rooms.
This is like
Weed brings us back together.
It does, and I just wish we. Not that we didn't spend any time smoking pot. I wish we did more together.
Well, I got busted smoking pot, so the whole second.
So maybe I was
semester,
much smarter.
I couldn't even do it.
Really?
Yeah, but I've made up for it ever since.
You're still going.
Yeah, one of the calling cards for getting into the industry. I have empathy.
For people. So we went to Emory together. We didn't know each other before we got there, but certainly we did when we were there. And then reconnected years, like within the past 5 years, because you launched Grown In.
Yes.
And you're based in Chicago. Tell us what Grown In, the evolution of Grown In, and where you are today.
Sure. So Grown In is a cannabis media company, like other great cannabis media companies that are launching here in Vegas today. There needs to be more of us. So we've been doing it for 4 years. We started 4 years ago this week.
Oh, wow.
So in late 19, the inception originally was a newsletter to cover the emerging Illinois market, which was about to go to adult use from recreational. I did not realize at the time that Illinois and Chicago is arguably the cannabis capital of the United States, at least as measured by the concentration of multi-state operators, primarily Green Thumb, Cresco, Verano, PharmaCann, and we still take credit for Curaleaf because it's mainly grassroots. You could see my Chicago accent coming when I talk about that. Anyway, started as a newsletter. We're our second iteration beyond the newsletter in 2020, 2021 was the launch of a national responsible-based vendor training program. And today is a multimedia company. We do live events. We focus on networking. We focus on alliteration because our mission is to create and cultivate commercial connections among cannabis industry professionals with complementary interests for the purpose of fostering economic development, access, and opportunity for all stakeholders in the ascending industry.
That's pretty good. You just rifled that off.
Clean living.
Right, that's what I was going to chalk it up to. But tell us about some of the forms it takes now. You talk about networking, but you're doing some really interesting things. Well, you're doing some really interesting things. One of the interesting things that I like that you're doing is I'm going to screw it up, but like cultivators and retailers getting together, like up and down the supply chain.
So one of our franchise events that started in Illinois and it's going to New York, Ohio, and other markets are statewide cannabis business conferences. So these are primarily in, I said Web 2.0, Cannabis 2.0, 3.0 markets in the Midwest, Northeast, same regulatory framework as Illinois. So Massachusetts, New York, pretty much every new state going legal right now is adopting a similar model where you have a finite number of incumbent large retailers like the MSOs I just described. But then you have this emerging market of largely social equity driven startups on the retail manufacturing and we'll call it craft or small growth side. We, in many ways, are the doobie diplomats between those constituencies.
Really like alliterations.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
And I do. I don't know. I tried doing it there. So, while it's well chronicled, among your readers, viewers, followers, ours as well, the many differences that like big corporate cannabis has with social upstarts in terms of having maybe certainly a large position in markets where others are trying to get in. What we've realized is, that the reality is in New York in particular, certainly in Illinois over the last couple of years, we need to create commercial connections between the MSOs and the social equity startups. And so what we do is we literally convene, there are about 18 established operators in Illinois. They come to our events. We then curate scheduled meetings with newer operators that are about to come online over the next 3 to 30 months. And so what happens there is professional commercial relationships develop between large established cannabis companies and social startups that, they might be battling from a lobbying perspective on, what the priorities are in order to normalize this industry. But the reality is a Cresco or a GTI has a lot of weed to sell given their CapEx investments. And if you're a social equity dispensary in Illinois, in New York, in many of these markets, the only place you're going to get your supply is from the incumbents until the other growers come online. So we do those quarterly in Illinois. We're going to start them in New York in Q1 of 2024. Ohio and Missouri are other markets that are asking us to do that.
How do you work on breaking down those barriers between MSOs and social equity stakeholders, whatever you may call them? I mean, I've covered this for a long time, and the conversation is loud, and it's quite toxic at times.
No. They have many reasons to distrust each other. However,
structurally.
We really
however,
are a doobie diplomat.
Yeah.
We're the doobie diplomat. So if you take an angle from 35,000 feet out, it takes a certain type of individual to want to get into the cannabis industry today, or really at any time. So if you start with how we all have things in common, which is at some point in our lives, most of us transitioned from another sector into cannabis. Some of the younger folks just got out and they never knew any other kind of world.
Right.
But there's very few of us. And so if you could take that mindset of I want to devote my career in cannabis during this ascending time, where I call it the internet of 1994, we need to find things to bring us together. And this is a capitalistic enterprise. And so if we can make sure that there are financial incentives between the buyers and the sellers, they might still battle in the state capitals in Albany, Springfield, whatever, but relationships are developing, partnerships are developing. We're realizing that interests that we think are entrenched for a period of time tend to dissolve away when we realize that there's an opportunity to capture money in a sector where obviously capital is hard to come by.
Can I ask you another thing you're doing?
Please do.
Because you're also both when you talk privately but also publicly talking about innovation in the space and how to foster innovation, technology, product, whatever it is. And you, of course, want to see it happen in Chicago. You're a hometown boy. Talk about what you're trying to foster in terms of innovation in Illinois specifically and how that's fostered.
Sure. So there is a world-class incubator in Chicago called 1871, named after the year of the Chicago fire. Started by J.B. Pritzker, who is now governor of Illinois. He was the guy that signed the program into law and probably going to be running for president in about 3 or 4 years. What we do is use that space that was originally developed for purely tech and digital companies, and as part of what's called the Cannabis Innovation Lab, which is actually international in scope. We had a cohort about 50 different startups representing 18 states and 3 countries to participate in year 1. In year 2, what we are doing is in this market, particularly in the fundraising environment, we are level setting expectations and tightening business plans and investor communications for the next generation of startups that will invariably find opportunity in this space. So what we're doing with innovation, and what I like to think about in this period of time, having lived through the internet.com boom and bust and other subsequent ascending industries, is there's no better time to start a company, a media company, when the market is down. Because when the market is down after, a bullish period over the last couple of years, a lot of the, hucksters that came here 2 years ago that really didn't really have a passion for the plant, a passion for the industry, they just were going after a gold rush, you notice many of them are not here this year. There's not funding for it. There's not an environment for it. Who remains are folks like us that believe, that need it, that want it, that could then bring in others that have been kind of curious and thinking, well, maybe now I want to start my career in this space. And what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention. Right now, it's really hard to succeed. Those companies that succeed are going to be glorious. So we want to create, through Cannabis Innovation Lab at 1871, as well as through other incubators in other states, a model where we could identify best practices for cannabis startups, both licensed holders as well as a lot of digital technology companies, to succeed in ways they otherwise would not.
I love it. I love what you're doing. Love Gronin. Love the team. And I don't love where we are in the timing of today right now. We're like super backed up, and it's all my fault. I feel bad. But can we promise that you'll come back onto a
By all means.
Okay.
By all means. I really appreciate being here. I really celebrate the launch of Cultivated. And I look forward to many, many great times ahead.
I look forward to it too, especially today, later today, as we all get through to Friday, hopefully, back to our lives. But also as things progress, I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much for the team for coming, and we look forward to seeing you and connecting with you again soon.
Congratulations on the launch. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Brad. That's Brad Spearson from Grown In. We'll be right back with Frederica Easley from the People's Ecosystem. So we'll be right back. We're going to make this a very quick change. From Planet 13, we are Cultivated Live. We'll be right back. are back with Cultivated Live from Planet 13 in Las Vegas. I'm Jay, Krista, Jeremy, Frederica, Easley. Thank you so much for being here from the People's Ecosystem. Before we dive in, and we were actually chatting before we even went live about things we're not going to talk about now, including laundry and hockey and sweat. Tell us a bit about the People's Ecosystem, and then we'll dive into it.
Yeah. So the People's Ecosystem is a company ran by 3 dynamic, amazing women, Christine De La Rosa, we have Melanie Davis, and we have Chef Charlene Kaabay. She was the first Filipino to win Chopped. And so she's our Chief Innovation Officer. Melanie is our Operations Officer, and Christine is the CEO. They're also a part of the LGBTQIA community, and so we are centered on equity. We currently have manufacturing in Santa Rosa, California, and Albuquerque, New Mexico, with some things coming on the horizon in Q1, so look out for it. Michigan and Illinois. Specifically with the company, I do a number of things. So one, I have a podcast, People Are Blunt, where we talk about all blunt things, pun intended, with cannabis. I also analyze policy rules and regulations, looking specifically with the equity lens, so areas where language can intentionally or unintentionally do harm to communities that have already been devastated and impacted by the successful war on drugs. Because people like to say it wasn't successful, but it actually did what it was intended to do, right? To demonize Black, Latinx, indigenous people. And so also, at Benzinga, we announced a joint venture with 240L Logistics. And so we have developed a company called Eco240, where we are marrying the ecosystem that we've built in the industry. So all of the brands, all of whether it's ancillary or plant touching, but all of the people that we know, right? All of our homies. We are marrying that with logistics and trying to take the guessing out of this whole industry, making sure that the right product is on the right shelf at the right time.
I like it.
I love that.
Yeah.
That
She's
literally
so good,
is
right?
magic to my ears.
Can I want to dive into the People's Ecosystem, but how we first connected.
Yeah.
We're actually talking about 280E and rescheduling, which versus all the things and watching gummies get made doesn't sound as sexy as if we were talking about gummies or brands. But talk a little bit about that, because not that you have an unpopular opinion, but you were voicing positivity towards rescheduling, which wasn't online. People aren't always saying that. But talk a little bit about that and what it means for you in the People's Ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, so here's the reality. Because cannabis is still a Schedule 1, right, federally illegal, businesses are not, they're not afforded the opportunity to seek capital in the way that normal businesses are, right? You can't just go to a bank and try and take out a loan, right? Now you add on to that, being a business that is run by women, you add on to that, race relations, which we know is a real thing, right? And so I think it was 2 years ago, Crunchbase came out with a report that said, out of VC capital, only 2.8% goes to women and minority-owned businesses, right? So if you bring that into cannabis, it's even less, right? It's probably maybe not even a full percent. And then that, when you tack on to what happens for early capital influx, it's even less, right? Because they want proof of concept, right? So what we need, or all small businesses need, is the opportunity to actually have an easier, non-predatory way of supporting your business, of being able to scale your business, of being able to operate in this space. What we also need is the research, right? Because as we're on this road to normalizing cannabis, normalizing consumption, we haven't even tapped into this plant, in terms of the full spectrum and knowing about it and what it's capable of and all the cannabinoids and how it interacts with your cannabinoid system, our internal systems. And so we need that research. So all of this goes inches, towards that finish line, which is for it to be totally descheduled and for it to be normal and just this everyday thing of life, right? So part of what we were talking about was that. Another part we were talking about is look, I've never read any policy that was foolproof, right? And that didn't need to be tweaked. Policy has to build on each other. And so as we're trying to normalize, as we're trying to figure this all out, we have to keep moving, right? There has to be progress. And so this would be progress, right? This would be something to allow us to take a step forward, to hopefully ease concerns and fears as we learn more about the plant, as we continue to see entrepreneurs and business owners handling business in a normal way, right? Businesses pay so much in taxes, like 280E is freaking crazy. And so, I mean, it really hinders business owners from being able to scale, from being able to reach their full potential.
So in policy debates, and I've covered this a lot, there's tension between incrementalists, which from what I'm hearing is sort of your position, and maximalists, right?
Yeah.
The question is, what is the maximalist perspective on why rescheduling can be bad for social equity focused folks in the cannabis industry? And why? How do you sort of intelligently debate that?
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing. Cannabis is, and even as you're talking about legalizing, you're talking about, decriminalizing, it's a very emotional thing. It's emotional.
Yeah.
Because you literally have people who are still paying with their lives. There are people in jail, right? There are families that have been broken, families that have been ruined, people who have lost time that they can never get back for a plant that others are making money on right now, right? So it's very emotional, and so you have this kind of like zero-sum game of like, we want it all, and we want it all right now, and we actually deserve that, right? So I don't want to come across as like that's not something that that is deserving, right? We deserve that. People have paid, right? And the only reason why cannabis is being regulated is because legacy showed you just how profitable it is, right? And so now this country wants their piece of the pie. They want that revenue. They want that tax revenue. I think the thing is that I like to deal in facts, right? The road to a comprehensive reform, it has to go through our system. It has to go through the Senate. It has to go through the House. And so I just ask people, can I cuss on this?
Sure.
Okay. So
please.
Do you even think that shit can happen? Like, I mean, like if we're going to be real and we look at who's in office, right? And we look at, where they stand on this. And I mean, like, look, every other week is like, they can't even pass the budget. Like, we are like.
Can't even decide on a Speaker of the House.
I mean, couldn't even get a Speaker of the House. So these are the people we talking about here, okay? Right. And so it's like, do you really think that can move, that can be done, right? So I think for me, it's not an either or, it's an and thing. It's like we got to put it all out there. You know what I'm saying? We have to put it all out there, and we have to support it all, and we have to make sure that the guardrails are in place, so that communities don't get left behind. And specifically for safe banking, and when you're talking about like 280E and things of that nature, a lot of the argument stems around, big businesses, multi-state operators, whatever, they're going to have additional access to cash, right? Like they're going to be able to take advantage of this. But there's no legislation that you can create and push forward that they're not going to be able to benefit. Like, I mean, anytime you have a whole group that is not able to benefit from something, then the lawsuits are going to come, right? Like anytime you try and structure it in that way, the lawsuits are going to come. The reality is, like, they already have money, right? They have a network that is worth a lot, right? So they're borrowing money from their friends. They have, they have the means already. And so, yes, are they going to have some access to it? Absolutely. There's no way that you can keep them from having or from being able to benefit in some way. But for that mom and pop, right? Like for the new entrepreneur that has mortgaged their home, that has robbed Peter to pay Paul, that has, borrowed from friends and family in $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 increments. Like, this is going to mean the world to them. This is the difference between them actually like staying and being able to make it through those first 3 years as a business, to hopefully reach black, right? Like to actually be able to sustain themselves versus not. And so we have to be mindful of that, like what's at stake. And it's immediate. And the need for banking the need for 280E relief, and the need for banking, those are like immediate things, right? It's also a safety issue, right? When these businesses have to operate in cash. So we you know what I'm saying? Like, we got to think about, or at least I do. I think about, like, okay, but what about the now? Because if somebody is in survival mode, like, if we look at Maslow's hierarchy, right? Sure. Bottom level, right? Like, if I'm in survival mode, you can't talk to me about this stuff over here. Like, you can't tell me, oh, you should have a savings and you should be eating better, when it's like, bitch, I'm hungry now. And I don't care about that salad. Like, I need something that's gonna, like, sustain me and bring me through the day. And also, like, I'm just trying to make it. So we got to get people out of the I'm just trying to make it phase.
I think I'm going to do the annoying thing and make a statement.
Okay.
I'll ask you to respond to, not a question. But I want to sort of hit on a couple points. Like, one, the zero-sum game. You know, I think from what I've covered these debates, it's not a zero-sum game. The second piece is that, you know, these MSOs, I think, to advocates are a little scary. But, you know, I've been reporting on them for 5 years, and I looked at their balance sheets. It's not Unilever. Like, they're not that scary. They need a lot of help. And so the statement I'm trying to make is there's a lot of middle ground that a rising tide can lift all boats, but it's how you create that argument, because just by the way I look, when I write about social equity, I get pushback from everyone all the time. There's no easy answer, but we try.
Well, I think,
and you made the argument much better than I ever have.
No.
We're going to can that, what you just said. And we're going to run it on repeat.
I think a lot of times the issue is that equity is looked at as a handout, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to something that is owed, right? And anytime you look at someone receiving something that they don't have skin in the game with, it makes it difficult, right? It makes it difficult. I would also kind of argue that in terms of that rising tide, you know, anytime you take care of the most marginalized, it makes it better for everyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you operate with that in mind, everyone will be okay. Everyone's gonna be okay. Stuff doesn't run. You know, there's this idea that you take care of the top and it'll, like, trickle down, right? It's not the case, right?
I think Reagan tried to make that argument.
Correct.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It doesn't happen. Like, greed is a thing. We're in this capitalist society. People want more. You know what I'm saying? And so what you really have to do is, like, make sure that, like, we're raising the base level. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I look at it.
No, it's a really good point. I didn't mean to get so esoteric. But
No, I love this conversation, and I love you, and that's why I wanted you to come in. And I'm glad you yelled at me at the Cosmo.
I was like, "Hey, what up?" Did you not see my message?
No, I did, but you know when you get that, you hear someone yell, and it's like, my mind generally goes to that I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
I have a mom voice.
Yeah, I was like, but my mom's not here. I don't think someone's yelling at me.
What did I do?
But I really appreciate you coming by and sharing your perspective, because I think it is an important one.
Yeah.
And you deliver it really well.
Well, thank you.
And I think it actually is one that resonates with certainly us, but also with the industry overall. So I appreciate that, and I hope as days and weeks and months go by, you'll share this perspective with us again on a variety of different things.
And congratulations on this.
Yeah, we're
on Cultivated News. This is so dope.
No, we're having a good time.
Yeah, and like, what a way to put it out there.
Yeah,
you know
but
what
this
I mean?
is the peak right now. This moment having a conversation. So it's all downhill from here on future guests. No, I'm just kidding. No, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
There will be more peaks.
I know we have a whole nother day tomorrow.
There will be more peaks. Yeah, absolutely.
But
thank you for having me.
Frederica, thank you so much for being here. We're going to take a quick break to let everybody switch chairs. We'll be right back with Liam Polsky from Elevated Signals, another Canadian company. But we're going to do nerd talk again with cannabis and technology. But Frederica, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Planet 13 and Cultivated Live. Now it's just me and Krista. Jeremy's on his way to a flight, so thank Jeremy for all his work over the past couple of days. And we are here with Bernie from Atlas Global Brands. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much.
It's good to see you in person. We haven't done that, I don't think, in a long time. I get to ask a question that I've been thinking about for, a week plus. You have a brand with Snoop Dogg,
Yep.
Dog Pound, spelled in a really cool way. We could talk about that. But there was a couple weeks ago, he was part of a marketing campaign where he said he was giving up smoke. And people sort of in the cannabis industry were confused with what that meant.
The speculation of a product dropping here.
He has not given up cannabis. He was something for a solo stove. But how did that bring interesting attention to the brand, one of your brands?
Well, yeah, definitely. We always see Snoop Dogg has always been synonymous with cannabis, right? And that's always been the fun part. So my phone was blowing up. What's going on with Snoop? Is this going to change anything? Because, of course, with Atlas, we're in 7 international markets and we have exclusivity with Snoop. So that was a lot of the conversation. So it was really, hey, let's pause. He's always really good at his marketing activities. And like you said, we saw it was for a smokeless fire pit for consumers.
Yeah. I love the smokeless fire pit. They don't need my help. They don't even need Snoop's. They crush at those solo stoves. But it is interesting in that there have been a lot of celebrity brands, let's call them, right? And some come across as just flat, like there's no connection to the product. It seems very basic, actually. Like not even marketing 101, but like pre-marketing 101. But talk about this brand and then what it means sort of the whole portfolio, because there is something uniquely authentic about Snoop Dogg and cannabis that works. But talk a little bit about that relationship.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, obviously we know Snoop Dogg has launched in previous, with previous LPs, and this was the time to really get it right. And so when they came with the brand Dog Pound, and we were the first one to bring that to life, and it's D*G pounds, right? And Dog Pounds kind of came to life. It was really around, okay, how do we launch this and make it compelling? Because we've heard the debates. Is it brands? Is it price? Is it potency? With Dog Pounds itself, and I'm a big brand marketer with my background, it's going to drive trial. And we know it's going to create conversation, and we're going to get initial distribution with retail. How do we ensure we get repeat? Well, we all know this. Put the greatest product in the bag and deliver on price-value relationship. You deliver that and the value exceeds the price with the consumer and it has bag appeal, you'll get repeat. So, we have all-in-one vapes. They do exceptionally well. And we've got really unique names like, we've got Lottie Dottie and Cryptic Chronic. So it all ties back to Snoop. And funny enough, he approves it. So it's like, hey, what do you think of this name? And we'll talk to the CEO of Doggy Style Records, Tiffany. She's amazing. Here he is. He likes it. Boom. We launch it. So he's very, very involved. It's not just a partnership where you're licensing the brand.
That's interesting. I like that.
That level of connection and being able to truly be authentic to say, give a stamp of approval on a product, I think is one of the differentiators when something feels intentional versus not. You actually just hit on something that I think is really topical in Canada and is becoming much more topical in the US, and that is initial distribution numbers are one thing, but reorder numbers are really where you see success or sustainability in the space. What trends have you seen in terms of distribution and reordering in Canada that influence how you look at other markets now?
Yeah, so on the distribution side, we're very lucky. It was curiosity. Dog Pounds, D*G, it's trademarked, right? It's Snoop. Everyone knows it's Snoop. So that was a big piece. It was a lot of the trial and educating the bud tenders, but first impression is everything. And we've all seen this and been in this space. You two, and I've known you both for a while now. You fool the consumer once, you're screwed. You fool them twice, rapid fire, and they'll tell everybody. But every particular product, and even with Snoop, and we had the philosophy here was, if Snoop walked into a dispensary and he bought his brand randomly, will you be proud of that brand and him smoking it? If the answer is yes, we've done our job. And so that has really driven the repeat. And even on the bud tender side, they're very unique flavor profiles, and really having his approval on that has been helpful. And on the international side, that's how we've spearheaded a lot of it. So Atlas Global, we're just under a year old. We're traded on the CSE under ATL, and the biggest thing that we've been able to do is utilize his brand, because let's face it, he's a global icon. You're launching a Snoop Dogg brand? Well, great. Same strategies, right? You use that as a way to get in, you portfolio sell, and you create a value proposition that's segment-based for the consumer. Like it's a very methodical and thoughtful approach.
Your background before cannabis was beverage?
Head of marketing for Jack Daniel's, Brown-Forman, and Dr. Pepper Snapple Group. Right. So CPG, Bev, Alc, and cannabis, but really classically trained on that marketing side and business development side.
Yeah. What are some of the same things or differences? Or there are tried and true methods that will work and you got to check these boxes, but cannabis adds a layer of uniqueness or compliance? Like, what is...
It's funny. We always like to compare it to CPG, and it is. And there's a big thing, but I always like to reference, Red Bull, and I still use it to this day, right? The product tastes like crap, but you know what? They use the marketing to overcome the taste barriers of the product every single time, and they win. It gives you wings. Guess what? Snoop Dogg, and I made the commitment when we partnered with him, it's the best product in the bag. Because you know what? Product first. This is what it is. We're converting the illicit market to the legal market, and if the product doesn't deliver, it doesn't matter who's on the bag, what the name is.
They'll never give you wings.
Win them back. And that's critical. And even all the way down to the genetics, right? Like we have a nursery at our Stratford facility in Greenseal. We want the most exotic genetics, and I'm not buying them from labs where they sell them to everyone, and it's no disrespect to the value chain. It's everyone has to create and monetize their opportunities. We're constantly pheno hunting and really making sure we have something compelling that when it comes out, the other LP next to me, whether it's domestic or international, is not going to bring that out because I know it's literally unique to us.
You bring up something really interesting with Red Bull, and that is that their entire physical presence and digital presence is all lifestyle, which is incredibly difficult to do in cannabis in Canada specifically, is to be lifestyle focused and not include kind of product, and then with the product be product centric. Basically, earlier you were talking a little bit about relationships with bud tenders. What is something that you've done with bud tenders and the brand that has created good connection over the last year outside of just the product being great? Because we all know that bud tenders have a difficulty sometimes accessing product as well, specifically in Canada where we have a floor of wholesale prices that comes through.
Yeah, the biggest thing that we've done was really making sure we connected what the positioning, what the brand is, and what the actual product is. And yes, you're right, it's product first, but we got a product called Juicy Ooey, okay? That's a Snoop saying, it's a Snoopism. Juicy Ooey, well, you smell it. It smells like a juicy fruit gum, and it tastes amazing, and it hits the marker. And when you open that up, it's key. But the thing is, we all know, when you see all these great U.S. brands coming over, they have a different price expectation. Like we're here in Las Vegas, pricing is very different, and price elasticity is very different in the U.S. versus Canada. Well, you know what? When you come in Canada, and you know pricing extremely well, the elasticity is very tight. And again, same with our brand portfolio is, I always like to use brands and connections. So let's use another brand, just like Starbucks. Back in the day, hey, I thought I could charge a latte for the same 3.5 gram and use that as a price elasticity on a product. Well, guess what? That's not today. I believe in the elasticity around, call it a pint coffee, $2-3. That's it, right? And so it's got to deliver on that side of things.
You've seen the industry. You have a background in CPG, and are there? I don't want you to badmouth competitors, but are there steps that you see competitors make? You're like, oh my god, that's never going to work. Is the industry so new that you still see people either making the same mistakes or making mistakes that you just like?
You know what? It's a journey. We've got incredible partners, and we're all making mistakes and learning together. And you know what? That's why I love about our industry is we're competitors, but we're all partners at the end of the day throughout the value chain. I would say, and it's going to be a topic that comes up, and I'm not going to go into details, but we know the excise tax is just ridiculous in terms of making a business sustainable. I would say the biggest challenge that I would say that's going to evolve, and this is for everyone, is rationalization of SKUs. So if you think of CPG,
You're making Krista so happy.
yeah, because it's how is a store going to carry so much? At the end of the day, you keep launching products. Your share of wallet is your share of wallet. When there's new products, something's trading off. You only have so much money as a retailer. And so I think that level of how do we start to bring that down? And it almost needs to be as an industry, as partners, to be able to say, let's make this unique, or otherwise the tail's so long, and that's going to actually impact us. And that's why I say, are people doing it right and wrong? They're trying different strategies, but to me, it's fewer, bigger, better, and really making sure that people have focus, and that's harder to actually execute on.
Right, it's easier to say than to do.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the lifespan of a SKU in store, in Canada it sits at about 8 months, and in the US it sits somewhere between 3 and 4, depending on the state.
Yeah.
And so I think what that actually tells us is that customers are looking for newness when we don't have a distribution body in the middle, basically, who's defining kind of like the call cycle and the product life cycle. And so instead, if we're looking for newness, it's like, when does newness show up? How do we communicate newness? And what does that actually look like? It doesn't have to be net new brand every time, but it has to there has to be a connection with the customer who is expecting to see something that might be a different flavor profile, or it might be a different strain profile, or maybe a packaging option, depending on what it is, to be able to keep customers engaged. And I think that's something that the Canadian space has had really struggled with different options now coming to market with a solution to that. But lifespan in market is a really interesting metric to compare.
And that's where the positioning of a brand, and I believe, really comes in, is as you mentioned, people want fresh product, new cultivars, continue to rotate it through. What's that brand ultimately going to position, and what's that almost, yes, there's a surprise element that we all love in retail, but there needs to have that level of predictability in terms of when it's coming out and what's that theme going to be. And I think that's where brands lack the ability to actually know what do they want to be and who they actually are. Like, we're still growing in this industry. Like, I think about my kids, like, they don't know who they are. They continue to evolve, and they pick up different things about themselves, and they ultimately become who they are. The brands are still doing that. Whereas, like, I think of a celebrity brand like Dog Pound, the positioning is very clear. Right? It is a lifestyle brand, yes. It is representing Snoop, but there's a level of authenticity that connects that you're going to get what you expect. I think some brands have done well, when I think of brands like, General Admission's done a really nice job in building, authenticity in the market, and there's a few others as well. But still, it's a fight. And then now, you're bringing your retail partners, and you do a lot on retail analysis as well. That's another conversation of, well, how do you navigate through, facings and product placement and distribution there, which, again, is another interesting topic I'm sure you're all talking about.
It's that, and it's like you're talking about brands learning and sort of entering markets and learning how long things are on shelves and the SKU rationalization and all that. But the retailers are on the same, or even a steeper learning curve with how to actually make their world work, right? And they're constantly in flux, and like they're super cash strapped. Like it's like
and that's it. So it's like, as pioneers and leaders of the group now, that's why, at Atlas Global Brands, we're focused on the international market.
Right.
Because it's our job to take, and I know there's groups in the US as well, as how do we take all these learnings and really expand and drive market growth in these markets. And so we're in Australia, we're in Israel, we're in the UK, we continue to grow there, but it's bringing in cultivars, because back in the day, I hate to say it, but the joke was, if it wasn't high potency years ago, send it internationally. That was literally the theme. But it's not the case anymore.
Right.
They want, so like Snoop, same expectation when we go out there. So suddenly we're disrupting, saying we want to be leaders and really bring great products into the market that they expect and want to try and continue to buy, and that's that support on that side. But I look to all the Canadian LPs, and many are going into it, is how do we help shape, like Canada's great and we got a great $4.5 billion market, but let's start to help cultivate and add value to the rest of the world, because we have to take advantage of that, and that's the benefit of being in Canada.
Yeah, and actually we've heard previous conversation with some taking that cue and going to states like identifying which states in the U.S. are going to be their markets. But similarly, the other markets around the world are actually going to look a lot more like Canada, I believe, than the U.S. Like it's going to be federal regime, it's going to be hyper-regulated, it's going to be a lot of government oversight or interest in it.
Involvement.
And U.S. is unique, right? Like, let's call the elephant out of the room. This is a very different time in terms of working capital and cash and investment. U.S., good luck. Like, it's a huge market, but good luck battling the Curaleafs of the world. Right? Like, it's going to be a challenge, right? Whereas in the international
we bleep out
market,
every MSO name, actually.
Yeah, exactly, right? But whereas you go internationally, and it's like, okay, you're really building something sustainable. They want to find the partners that are tried, tested, and true. And with EU GMP, it's just, okay, it's very, very consistent and predictable. And more importantly, like, let's change it. And that's where we're really headed on. And I would say the themes that I talk to with a lot of the investment community is, yes, Canada's great. It's a red ocean. We all know that. It's a fight. It's a dog fight. Whatever category you're in. Let's look over here and really do something and shape it and help to change that, because it's really in a unique time where, packaging still, like, it's 10-gram jar bags or as an example, right? And it's very, very simple. So let's make sure we really develop and lead on that. So that's really a key focus.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this conversation. Anytime Snoop Dogg comes up in a business conversation, I'm down.
And he's incredible. Like, we had him for launch in Toronto, and he's so engaged. So he's been a real great supporter, and expect greater and new innovation to come in Canada. We're excited about that.
Really excited for that. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining us here today. Thank you for waiting and being patient, and sharing expertise and insight. And we look forward to following year 2 of Atlas Global Brands, and we'll have you back to sort of talk about all the things that are going on. So thank you so much, Bernie. We're here at Planet 13 for Cultivated Live. We have one more group of guests, a twofer. We're going to be talking to the team from Elevated Signals, so we'll be right back with Paul and Liam. And thank you, Bernie.
Thank you. All right.
Welcome back to Planet 13. This is Cultivated Live. I'm Jay Rosenthal. You are Krista Raymer. We are here with the team from Elevated Signals. We have Liam and we have Paul.
Thanks for having us.
I'm a big fan of Elevated Signals. I like Canadian tech. I like Canadian tech that is cannabis related. Who wants to give sort of the rundown of what Elevated Signals is, and then we'll go dive deeper. You guys
go for it.
You guys rock, paper, scissors.
So nice, Canadian style.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elevated Signals is a software company out of Vancouver, Canada. We call ourselves Manufacturing Execution Systems. So we help producers, operators in cultivation and post-harvest processing to keep track of inventory, and certainly with a lens on compliance, GMP, GPP level record keeping and documentation. Something we face in Canada a lot, and we see internationally as well, of course. So.
And with that, sort of the compliance part, but the operational part, it is to get to be obviously always compliant as a cultivator or post-cultivation sort of processor, manufacturer, but also be a good business operator, right? Like the CFOs love you, is that right?
Yeah, all the secret data lives on the shop floor, and our job is to help kind of extract that. All the information traditionally lives on pen and paper or Excel sheets. It's like siloed information, and how do you get it out in real time? How do you do any cool like data analytics with it? So our job is just working with these awesome producers to help kind of digitally transform their manufacturing. So yeah, CFOs can get this information out. Operations team has better visibility. Quality is rolling. So
the lawyers, the compliance people, everybody.
Everybody's all in on it. Exactly.
And Canada's not a new market, and this type of technology was needed from day one, 10 years ago, right? But it continues to evolve. Is that because the operators are getting more sophisticated, because the technology is more sophisticated, or both, or all of those things?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it was a great point. Definitely the Canadian space, like internationally in Australia and like throughout the whole U.S., operators are becoming much more mature, just in their business thinking. Gone are the days of just getting as much cannabis material out there as fast as possible. Like everyone's got an eye on profitability, understanding their margins, just really honing in on like the products that they want to produce. And so much of that is like looking at your internal business systems that like let you kind of do that. So, back in the day when it was you were first licensed, it was all about staying compliant. Now, like you're saying, Jay, it's just about being a good manufacturer, being a good operator, and growing your business that way. Just being much more mature about it.
Yeah, and Canada's got a good run at this. The technology is an important part of it for the operators, for the processing, for the manufacturing, for the operations and compliance. And most of the world is going to look like Canada, at least that's my sense, much more than it does look like where we are today. Mm-hmm. Is that part of the thinking, like if we could really hone it in and be the best in class in this type of thing, when the world grows to look more like Canadian cannabis, we are well positioned to do so?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's part of our philosophy, how we've built our software and how we've independently validated ourselves against that standard. GMP, as an example, like Europe, Australia, Canada, of course, is much more of a lens towards GMP level of production, farmer grade, and we've sunk our teeth into that perspective. Obviously, we need to be able to handle sort of ground floor inventory management basics as part of cultivation and processing, but that seems to be where the future of cannabis is going to head, and even in the U.S., when we talk to operators, that's what they're looking in their crystal ball when that happens. I'm not sure, but like FDA regulation, GMP level production is where we've sort of placed our chips.
It will be a shock to this system. I don't know, maybe not in this building, but in cultivation like in California and other places that is, like we've been to those places, we've also been to the ones in Canada, and you're like, this is an entirely different vibe. Like there's no dogs walking the floor of a grow in Ontario, whereas, in Colorado or a hoop house, it's like,
could be a little bit more lax,
Yeah,
a little bit more chill. Totally. Yeah, different production systems. Definitely find like operators are still kind of thinking along the same lines in terms of like what they want their business to achieve. And like in Canada, it's a lot higher focus on quality. Not to say that American products like aren't high quality, but just like GPP standards are a lot bigger focus. And in US, it's all about like performance kind of thing, performance of your crop, performance of the tools and the staff that you have, and like that's their sort of MO in terms of driving towards like profitability.
The definition of quality is very different, I think.
Yes.
Like, and who is the definition of quality, right? Like in the U.S. example that you're just talking about would definitely be what's the customer's perception of quality. And this other side of what we're talking about, we're actually talking about like regulatory and like international value of a raw material. Earlier, you made a comment about having access to data and being able to make data decisions. I think like inventory management of raw materials is one of those areas where it's provides so much opportunity to be able to dial something in, but people have really struggled with this as a way to be able to forecast product coming down. Do you have any examples of great application of data that you've seen that have been really interesting?
Yeah, I think on the inventory side, everyone's trying to get visibility into what they can sell ultimately. There's a lot of producers, even mature producers up in Canada who've been doing it for a while, who still have a difficult time answering that question. So we try and help teams do a lot of things, but a big part of what we do is to help unlock the production chain such that the products that they're putting out, they know what's available, when it's going to be available, and get it out to consumers as fast as possible. So I think we take that lens on inventory and production, and that really snowballs into the digital record keeping that we do. In Canada, it's mandated. Lots of producers use paper, but putting all of that data together as well and making that efficient unlocks the team to accomplish some really interesting KPIs like write first-time documents, and eliminating this paper glut lets teams cycle through their production much more quickly and get products to market faster as well. And especially in this industry when it's pretty cost conscious and people are trying to be much more efficient, you can do more with less people. You can scale up with the same head count. You don't have to fire people because you go to digital. You can just put more volume to market, which is interesting.
And you will have an entire footprint. Like that's what I think is really interesting, is that in Canada, if you were to look at some of the ways that these businesses were built initially, they were maybe really large with a big physical footprint, but weren't necessarily setting themselves up from a data perspective to have a full sightline of what was happening in the business. And it's crazy how quickly you forget. Like we were looking through some data around product sell-through in Canada, and we had to be like, oh, actually there's a caveat on those like 4 sales months because there was an issue with hardware shipments from China. It's like that's the level of information that gets lost unless you have good record keeping within your own business.
And it's also the worst idea in the world to keep records on paper. Is that right? True or false?
Very true.
But isn't it shocking? Like when people tell me that still is the case with like cultivators and manufacturers that you're like, how is that?
Like it serves a time and purpose. There's benefits to paper. It's like you can just jot something down right away, and but like then you get into issues like sometimes paper just disappears, or like the really interesting thing is like the travel time that you have to like move documentation around. So you like think of lean manufacturing and you think of like waste. A big thing in waste is like time, and just like time spent moving around. At a few of our producers, like these really, really big ones, before we were working with them, they bought bikes for their staff. They're like, this will actually expedite the paper moving forward. So it's like, let's get bikes for them.
They probably didn't tell the insurance company they were buying.
Yeah, exactly.
Around the facility with paper. But do you want to give us like 1 or 2 examples of clients that you work with that are using elevated signals? Can you talk about
some great teams like Rubicon Organics, working with the Decibel team, MTL, Carmel.
All those people put out fire. Those are like
they're awesome producers. Like we're super fortunate to work with them. They just bring like really modern thinking in their operations. Some great producers in Australia as well who are just like very tech forward, and they see like this is how you need to operate a business in like today's modern world, much more competitive. They're like, we're gonna just do it right the first time, and like you were saying, get everything set up from the get-go instead of like retroactively trying to figure out like you need to get these systems in place. Like let's do it right and start to build that data lake from the get-go.
Even some of those ones you've noted, even though some have been around a long time, like they're not the first big ones that you think of when you think about Canadian cannabis. Like they're not the big ones, right? They are sizable, but they are actually right behind the first wave of people that failed. And these are like second wave people to say, like, we need to do it right, and we want to put out really good product. And how do you put out really good product consistently? You need the systems in place from day one, not to try to retroactively do it 3 years in. Like, we actually want to know what's working now,
today,
and we want to be able to look back at what's working now, a year from now, to say like this work didn't work, and like all of those things. And I think those companies you just mentioned, like they are in a class largely by themselves, like in Canada, putting out incredibly good product consistently. And I'm going to credit Elevated Signals with all that.
I'm sure those brands are super excited
We're gonna
about
pass
that.
it right back to them. Yeah.
Like you can never
Blushing
get rid
a
of
little
us.
bit,
We're
but
the
we're a
reason.
little piece of the puzzle.
Well, I think it's the sort of the Venn diagram of like people who care about the technology part of it, right? And engineers and product people. And then you have like really serious growers who are passionate about what they are bringing to it. And the two do have a Venn diagram, like in cannabis certainly, but like that is key to like, so you know what they need and can build towards it. You know what they need from a compliance, there is like a back and forth as well. Like you wouldn't be where you are today as a company if it weren't for the partners that are driving where the business needs to go.
1000%. Like we really work on like a partnership mentality with these producers where it's just like they're the ones who are in the trenches, like cultivating and manufacturing, and like our responsibility is to kind of provide the software that makes their life easier. So it's that partnership and give and take a little bit. And like the Venn diagram, we like to think about the overlapping part is like the data nerds. Like that's where it like combines together, and that's the thing. So when you like see people who are just like looking at all the information and vibing out on it, you're like, this is really cool of like what they can do with it, and like seeing the kind of like business information that they want to unlock is super interesting.
It's great. We wish you nothing but the best.
Yeah,
not just because you're Canadian, but also because I think and like what is happening in Canada has happened over 5 years is what's going to happen everywhere, maybe, but even here, as you're talking about, like as it becomes more closer to federal, like I think there's going to be a wake-up call too.
Yeah. I feel like as Canadians we have this like responsibility, like we have the crystal ball, it's like we've been here 5 years in the future, like we can bring these lessons back to like the new industries and just don't make the same mistakes that we did, or try to do different things.
But
totally.
But maybe they'll fix it quicker, right? Yeah. Well, Liam and Paul, really thankful that you were very gracious with your time, but also thank you for sharing your expertise and insight, and we look forward to connecting with you down the road when we're sort of closer to home, for sure. But thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
You got it. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back with the team from Urban Grow for the last conversation of the day, and then we'll wrap up from Planet 13. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the last conversation of today, which is Thursday, November 30th. Last day of November? Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I'm Jay. This is Krista. We are at Planet 13. This is Cultivated Live. We're here with Mitch from Urban Grow. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about Urban Grow, and then we'll dive deeper into it.
Yeah, I guess, quick elevator pitch is Urban Grow is an integrated design build firm specializing in controlled ag, but, with a particular focus in cannabis and a lot of expertise in that area.
And controlled ag. That's like hermetically, this is not a scientific term, but like hermetically sealed room to grow weed in.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, controlled ag overall is a little bit broad. I think it essentially encompasses everything as kind of baseline as a greenhouse all the way through fully indoor, controlled environment, HVAC equipment, that kind of thing. So, broad kind of umbrella. A lot of different crops kind of fall under it too, but a lot of cannabis projects in it.
What trends have you seen in the last 3 years?
That's a great question too. There have been a lot of different trends, and even the trends 3 years ago versus the last year have been pretty different. Overall, there's been a pretty big slowdown, I would say, in new construction in the market. So we're seeing a lot of the kind of existing operators consolidate. We're seeing a lot of kind of acquisitions over the last couple of years. And then with that, groups are trying to kind of standardize. So they have a couple facilities in different states. Let's say they have one in Illinois, one in New Jersey, one in Florida, and those are all totally different environments. If they were acquired over a period of time, they were built by different people. And so we're seeing a lot of kind of retrofits to improve, kind of integrate new equipment, kind of technology that's been proven over the last 3 to 5 years, and then just standardization across multiple locations.
And what are the relative size of these? Because one of the trends, not certainly the work that you do, but one of the trends we've seen, certainly on the Canadian side, is like massive greenhouse that gets built amazing and actually never gets used. And then like this shift almost of the entire market to like smaller grows, but also not a 1 million square foot greenhouse. Like it's somewhere, like the right sizing or right fitting the operations to.
Yeah, and that's a conversation, especially as we're getting more involved in like architecture. We've acquired, for us over the last 3 years, we acquired architecture, engineering, full MEP in-house, construction. And so as we're getting more into the early design phase of projects, we're having those conversations a lot more with customers. And really, I think, there's no perfect grow, there's no perfect facility, but it comes down to your local market and then your desired kind of end product. Sometimes, like the greenhouses we're kind of trying to do, they're not trying to grow the highest quality product. They're just trying to grow bulk mid-grade, I like to call it. And greenhouse can be a good solution for that. Canada, I think part of the challenge is we're climate. You don't get a lot of light up there. The weather's not always great. Even in summer, it can be a little humid. So, these days we are seeing a lot more folks kind of go for that, I would say 30 to 50,000 square foot indoor facility. But a lot of that is just based on where we're seeing these facilities pop up. The regulations and restrictions around things like odor mitigation makes it a lot harder to do a greenhouse when you can't have smell for surrounding areas. But yeah, we're seeing a lot kind of more of a trend towards smaller, but still mid-sized commercial, and a lot more kind of heavily indoor, trying to chase that premium price point.
Yeah. And you said there's no perfect building, no perfect. Although unless you talk to a grower and they're like, the perfect thing is what we do and the way we do it.
It's their facility.
Like is it interesting to like certainly working with founders, right? I would imagine all the time, like new businesses starting up, saying we need it to be like this because this is how we grew in the legacy market, and then saying, well, great, but also like this is how you actually both compliance-wise, but like from a standard procedure of like how things get built.
Yeah, no, and we definitely see a lot of those legacy mentalities come in. Part of it is that equipment over the last few years for these cultivation facilities, greenhouse and indoor, has gotten a lot better. And so, the best and, what would have been maybe closer to a perfect grow 5 years ago, it just looks very different than it does today based on, new options on HVAC, new kind of strategies that people are employing around, different equipment items, different SOPs in cultivation also. And a lot of that is really going to be driven by the state regulations. A lot of the early states we saw had plant count limitations that pushed people away from kind of legacy cultivation strategies. So it all depends where you're growing and again what your kind of end product goal is and who you're trying to target with it.
But the trend that I think you've identified is like more normal sized grows that actually meet the market demand that is evolving, which says to me that the companies that are building these things are actually becoming better businesses. Yeah. Right? There's a lot like we saw people just building facilities because that's what drove stock price, honestly.
Yeah.
Whereas it wasn't made for like, this is how we're going to grow. This is the type of weed we're going to grow. This is like the premium price point's got to be grown like this. The mid grade is going to be like this. For stuff that's completely extracted, we're going to grow outside. Like it actually is sort of more right sizing as a trend, which I think speaks to like, well, conferences like this where people are actually talking about the future of the industry.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you know, I think there was a lot of hype about capital markets and raising a lot of money early on, and a lot of that was done, like you said, in Canada, based on, or the story that they were telling investors was just based on canopy square footage.
Right.
And greenhouse canopy is easier to set up, especially if you can buy a 30-acre commercial ag greenhouse and convert it.
Right.
And so now I think you're right. You know, a trend that we're seeing for the better is just folks thinking about growing product and making, you know, selling it for profit, which is something that hasn't, you know, it's as simple as it sounds. It's something that hasn't been.
Can you imagine that that's the business model? Right.
I had a Canadian CEO years ago tell me, he said, you know, up here it's like field of dreams, grow it and they will come. And, you know, and I think, yeah, we're definitely seeing a shift towards, you know, targeting the market, targeting your end customer. And also people, you know, now that markets are more mature, I think operators have some data to look at and say, hey, you know, I think this product is going to do really well in the market. You know, we're seeing a lot of folks, you know, in kind of the spirit of retrofitting and improving assets that you know, are either newly acquired or struggling. A lot of folks are changing extraction strategies. We're seeing a lot more hash in the market because you can look at mature markets like Colorado and even California to a degree and see that those products are still selling for a really large premium, and you know, you're able to be profitable with product that otherwise you'd be selling out the door for a loss as flower. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you know, it's I guess refreshing in a lot of ways to see folks thinking about the bottom line, thinking about costs now that money is a lot harder to raise for a lot of them.
No money out there.
The money has to come from your products, right. And you know, it's a different ballgame when you're doing that.
Yeah. And what do you think, you know, we're 1.5 days into the show down the street. Like, what are the things you are either hoping to learn or take away from here to apply to sort of everyday operations?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of like we're talking about, seeing what trends are different. You know, I think the MSOs, the multi-state operators in the U.S., they're still active, but in different areas than they were. They're not doing, you know, expansion for new cultivation quite as much. They're really kind of, again, trying to optimize what they already have and then trying to kind of, you know, focus on post-harvest a little bit more. And so you can even see that reflected a little bit in the show. There's just a lot more post-harvest equipment vendors. You know, the booths are bigger for the post-harvest groups. The hall that they're in is bigger than it has been in the past. And there are a lot more vendors in that space. It's, you know, which I think is for the better because everyone's been focusing on cultivation and really nailing that down. But at the end of the day, that's only half of it.
Right.
And you can grow the best product in the garden, but if it doesn't get through the dry cure room and into the product packaging in a way that's kind of appealing to consumers, it doesn't matter how good it was, you know, coming out of the flower room.
Right. Yeah. The show floor, like, I'm bringing my brother's never been to a cannabis show here, and it's like the world is like, it's like Willy Wonka. Well,
Yeah.
We're looking at machines right now, right?
Yeah.
But then also, like, your point, like, if everybody's all focused on cultivation, not the end product, it's like you're missing out half the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know. I mean, it's exciting to see. We do everything from, you know, early design of cultivation all the way through extraction labs, kitchens, that kind of thing. So it's good to see people having more focus on that, even in the early design phase. You know, we're starting to have more conversations with customers that they know what they want to do by the end, and that helps in the design phase of cultivation also, because you can gear your operation towards the products that you're going to be, you know, actually selling to the end customer.
So it's similar to every part of the sector where it's like people went in with a business model or an idea.
Yeah.
But like getting the facility to actually do that thing is one thing, but then having the facility do the thing you want to do next or the right thing to do is like, it's all retrofit, right? It's
totally. And also, you know, the markets were very different. You know, when you're selling wholesale for $2,000-$3,000 a pound, you don't need to do anything with the product. You can, you know, throw it in a 3-pound bag and sell it out the door. But when you have a lot of that product sitting, it's aging, it's losing value, you have to kind of start getting creative with how to either make it better so that you can sell it out the door at the same price wholesale, or process it in a way that's more appealing and you're able to get better margins.
Yeah. I appreciate your insight because I think it's really important, and I thank you for your patience as we were getting things going. So thank you so much, Mitch, for being here, and for the team for building time in your schedule to make it happen. And thank you, Krista, for today.
Thank you, Jay.
And we'll give another
Thanks
shout
for
out to
the
Planet
time.
13, who was so gracious yesterday. They were making gummies, which was fun to watch, but then they were like canning beverages, which was also fun to watch right in our view. And thank you to the crew. Thank you to the producer, Matt. Thank you to Annie. And we'll be back tomorrow, also at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time from Planet 13. This is Cultivated Live. I'm Jay, you're Krista, and you're Mitch. We'll see you all tomorrow, 8:30 Pacific time.
Thanks.
Awesome.